Chapter 1933. As the wealthiest club, Pantheon naturally had top-notch tactical commanders. In a situation where they had no advantage in terms of timing, location, and manpower, the Nine Regions team finally lost the game after nearly 2 hours of exciting battle that absolutely made the audience cry out in excitement. In the end, Pantheon won the right to advance to the finals and compete against the Ragtag team. Looking at the last two teams in the arena, the audience was filled with anticipation. Both Motley Crowd and Pantheon were not easy to deal with. Since its establishment, Pantheon had been the pinnacle of esports. Just like the name of their team, the players in Pantheon were all famous god-level players. It was not an exaggeration to call their team Pantheon. Although Pantheon had only been established for a few years, and their foundation was far from that of the established clubs, the power of money allowed them to gather the strongest fighting force in the world. As soon as they debuted, they stepped on the Templar Church and stood at the pinnacle of the esports industry as the strongest player. For several years, they stood undefeated and could be said to be the only one in the esports industry. The two major teams, Templar Church and Nine States, took turns to challenge them. In the end, they returned with grievances. Their strength was evident. Although Motley Crowd was just a grassroots team and did not have the illustrious record and glory of dominating an area like Pantheon, Motley Crowd had the most terrifying experts in the world. In the last match, Wang Yu defeated 7 people by himself and became famous. He was remembered by all the players in the world. In addition to Wang Yu, evildoers Run Wild and Yang Na were also very strong. With such a configuration, the real strength of Motley Crowd, a small team, became more and more unpredictable. Was a team of god-level players stronger, or was a team of god-level players stronger? This was a question that no one dared to come to a conclusion. After all, in a battle between experts, even the experts had no idea, let alone the ordinary players. In the past, as long as Pantheon was there, the result was basically no suspense. This time, the audience finally had a sense of anticipation. After the break, Motley Crowd and Pantheon entered the arena under the watchful eyes of the audience. When they brushed past each other, Uranus smiled at evildoers Run Wild, and then revealed a meaningful smile at the Ragtag bunch. Wuji snorted coldly, not to be outdone, and glanced sideways at Uranus. The two's gazes became the only interaction between the two teams in this match. After entering the gaming pods, both teams appeared on the stage. After the host briefly introduced the information of both teams and their past results, the finals finally began. As the defending champion team in the past, Pantheon Temple naturally belonged to the home team. According to convention, Pantheon Temple would choose the map for the first match. Logically speaking, the majority of the teams would choose the smallest map for the first match. After all, the 1v1 matches were simple and brutal. This was especially true against a motley crew of dirty players. The smaller the map, the more advantageous it would be for them. Uranus, on the other hand, chose random. As expected of the Pantheon Palace, impressive indeed. Seeing how Uranus chose the map so casually, the audience sighed from the bottom of their hearts. The terrain and scenery were there for the weaker side to turn the tables. After a few matches, everyone knew that the motley crew of the Ragtag bunch mainly relied on dirty play. Even so, Uranus still chose random. It was obvious that he was telling everyone that Pantheon was strong and that they were not afraid of any tricks. It was also telling the motley crew that Pantheon was a top professional and would never bully amateurs. On the other hand, Wuji snorted at Uranus' actions. This was because Wuji knew that the motley crew of the Ragtag bunch would not be at a disadvantage with Wang Yu's team in the first match. The reason why Uranus did this was to establish his chastity. Even if they lost the first match, he could blame it on the map. Then, the audience would turn around and look down on the motley crew of the Ragtag bunch tactics. After a few flashes, the venue was finally set to City Street. Then, the venue changed to a main city filled with buildings. The City Street map was not huge, almost the same size as the intersection of Yu Huiqing's Central Street. However, due to the surrounding buildings, the scene became a lot more complicated. I'm familiar with this map. Seeing that the scene had changed, the motley crew of the ragtag bunch was eager to give it a try. How about letting me go for this match? Chuanjin had played the game for a long time. Half of the time, they were either being chased or being chased. No one was more professional than the players of Chuanjin when it came to guerrilla warfare in such a scene. Seeing the map filled with buildings, Chuanjin felt as if they had returned home. Even if their opponent was the top professional in the industry, they still wanted to go up and challenge them. With the many years of experience of being a street rat, Chuanjin was like a fish in water when it came to fighting in this kind of terrain. This was an occupational disease of being chased. Stop bullshitting. Wuji waved his hand and interrupted. As soon as you go up, you will fall into Uranus' trap. In the end, Wuji was more alert. The reason why Uranus chose to go up randomly was because as a top professional, Uranus had understood the mentality of the motley crew of ragtag bunch after a few matches. Not only were these guys wretched, but they also loved to be in the limelight. From their fighting style, it was not difficult to see that these guys were a group of gamblers who risked their lives. Otherwise, they would not have left Wang Yu alone in the previous match. After all, this was a top professional competition. Any normal person would not play so big. Gamblers always had the mentality of getting lucky. If the first match was in the ring, the normal players of the motley crew of ragtag bunch would not easily go up to fight Pantheon. However, with the terrain becoming more complicated, the players of the motley crew of ragtag bunch would definitely take the initiative to fight. There is an old saying in Huaxia, show the enemy that you are strong in order to seek peace, and show the enemy that you are weak in order to seek war. At this time, it could be said that Uranus' thoughts coincided. Fortunately, the commander of the motley crew, Wuji, was relatively calm. If it were any other team, they would have probably jumped into Uranus' trap. Although the people of the motley crew of ragtag bunch were usually very unconvinced of Wuji, once they were on the battlefield, they had unconditional trust in Wuji. After hearing Wuji's words, everyone was slightly stunned and asked, "Then who will go up first?" "Of course it's safer." Wuji looked back at Yang Na and said, "Miss Qingxue, it's better if you go first." "Understood." Yang Na nodded and pressed the confirmation button next to her seat. Mobile version of the fastest updated website. Chapter 1934. With a flash of light, Yang Na was teleported to the arena. At the same time, the contestant from Pantheon also appeared opposite Yang Na. "Yo!" Seeing Yang Na's opponent, the dogs from the motley bunch could not help but boo. Yang Na's opponent was also a female player. None of the female characters in Rebirth were ugly, and their equipment was designed to suit the aesthetic of the players. The girl in front of Yang Na was not only tall, but she was also wearing a white dress with a high ponytail behind her head. She looked capable and had a great temperament. Especially the girl with a shield in one hand and a spear in the other. She looked wild and beautiful. "I told you to let me go. What a pity." Mingdu looked at Yang Na's opponent with a look of pity. "What's the point of letting you go?" To place one's pride could not help but mock. "Do you dare to get close?" "Why not? At most, I'll just die. As for you, do you know what a woman is? Do you know where to touch?" Mingdu retorted. "Don't talk nonsense." Seeing Mingdu and to place one's pride becoming more and more ridiculous, Wuji frowned and said, "This is a tigress. Do you want to die? What's there to be afraid of? It's not like we haven't seen it before." Mingdu, and to place one's pride, looked at Exquisite Dream at the same time. Exquisite Dream's expression darkened as she began to reload her crossbow. "This is Athena, right?" Chun Xiang came over and asked as he was more knowledgeable. "That's right. This woman is Athena." Wuji nodded. At this time, the host began to introduce the contestants of both sides. As expected, Yang Na's opponent was the legendary Athena. Who's Athena? Wang Yu was always trying to dampen the mood. However, this time, not only Wang Yu, but even Yin Lao Air and the others were interested. "Have you heard of Kiyani?" Wuji raised his eyebrows as he glanced at Wang Yu, then turned to ask the others. "No. Then who is it?" Wang Yu was still at a loss. In Wang Yu's eyes, the gods in the circle were no different from passers-by. Those who didn't know better would think that he was pretending. F asterisk CK. It's Kayani. However, when he heard Wuji's words, Yin Lao Air jumped up and said in surprise, "The world's best shield warrior? Not bad." Wuji said, "That's her." Athena is the code name of the Pantheon. She changed her name after joining the Pantheon last year. No wonder, no wonder. Yin Lao Air sighed. I thought she had retired. Is this woman very powerful? Linglong Meng asked unhappily. It's more than powerful, Yin Lao Air said with admiration. That's the faith of us shield warriors. Although many female players didn't want to admit it, under normal circumstances, there was a gap between the strength of female players and male players. Therefore, the rankings of male players and female players were always separated. For example, the number 1 female fighter, the number 1 female warrior, and so on. This division meant that their rankings were limited to female players. Athena was different. Her title was the world's best shield warrior. It was not limited to gender. It was N0. 1. The shield warrior class was one of the most important classes in any game. For a female player to be able to fight her way through so many male experts and become known as the world's number 1, one could just imagine how powerful she was. In all RPG games, Kayani was the absolute faith of shield warriors. As a shield warrior, Yin Lao Air was no exception. Tis, Linglong Meng pursed her lips in annoyance. She raised her hand and shouted, "Nana, kill her." Hearing Linglong Meng's voice, Yin Lao Air was confused. What's wrong with her? I can't hear her shouting from here. Second bro, Wuji patted Yin Lao Air's shoulder and said, "You're really suitable to be in the front row. You're a real straight man." I'm Yin Lao Air, not second bro. Yin Lao Air glared. Got it, second bro, Wuji said. Women, especially beautiful women, would instinctively resist girls who were prettier than them. In the arena, Yang Na looked at the beautiful girl opposite her expressionlessly. As soon as the match began, Yang Na raised her crossbow and shot at Athena. However, shield warriors were the bane of all agility classes. Both assassins and archers were completely dominated by shield warriors. Although shield warriors couldn't catch up to them, it was very difficult for them to hurt shield warriors. Athena raised the shield in her left hand slightly to protect herself from the incoming arrows. Clang, 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 clang. After a series of crashing sounds, Yang Na's arrows were all blocked and fell to the ground. However, Yang Na didn't expect these arrows to hurt her opponent. Just as Athena raised her shield to defend, Yang Na's figure flashed and rushed at Athena. It must be said that Yang Na was also a typical non-mainstream archer. Other archers would run as far as possible to pull away from their opponents, but Yang Na was different. She would always find ways to get close to her opponents. Fortunately, after a few matches, Athena had some understanding of Yang Na's style. Otherwise, even an expert like her would be caught off guard. Yang Na's movement speed was quite fast, and she rushed in front of Athena in a flash. Athena swung her shield and lowered her head to hit Yang Na with shield bash. Yang Na dodged calmly. Athena only saw a figure flash in front of her, and in the next moment, Yang Na appeared behind Athena. Yang Na was very good at dealing with shield warriors. After all, shield warriors were relatively clumsy, and their turning speed was relatively slow. The opponent couldn't hurt them from the front, but it wasn't easy to dodge and attack from the back. Yang Na raised her crossbow and aimed at the back of Athena's head. A white light gathered on the crossbow. Shock arrow, an archer's main control skill, which could knock back and stun the target. But who knew that at this moment, Athena didn't even look back. She swung her spear backward and swept it toward Yang Na's head. Yang Na had been practicing martial arts for many years. Although she wasn't as sensitive to killing intent as Wang Yu, her reaction speed wasn't bad. Just as Athena's spear was about to hit Yang Na's head, Yang Na hurriedly leaned back and did a backflip to avoid Athena's attack. Athena also took advantage of Yang Na's dodge to turn around. Without waiting for Yang Na to stand firm, Athena threw the spear in her right hand at Yang Na without the slightest pause. It immediately flew out of her hand and flew toward Yang Na's face. Well, although a fight between women wasn't as hot-blooded as a fight between men, it was really frightening. How much hatred and resentment must there be between the two of them? Seeing that Yang Na's head was about to be pierced by the spear, Yang Na twisted her legs, and her body twisted in a strange arc to avoid Athena's spear. When Athena saw this, she smiled and pulled at the air with her right hand. Clang! At this moment, Yang Na heard the sound of iron chains. Chapter 1935. Then, an indistinct chain appeared between Athena and the spear. Athena pulled and pulled, appearing beside Yang Na as if she had teleported. At the same time, she raised her shield and used taunt on Yang Na. Taunt couldn't be dodged or defended. At such a close distance, it was too late for Yang Na to react. She was immediately pulled in front of Athena. Athena's other hand raised her shield and smashed it down. Bang! A muffled sound rang out. The shield landed squarely on Yang Na's head, stunning her on the spot. After knocking Yang Na out, Athena didn't stop. She pulled out the spear from the ground and stabbed it at Yang Na. Yang Na was sent flying. Athena raised her shield again, lifting Yang Na up. Then, she stabbed the spear in her right hand diagonally upwards. The spear turned into a series of afterimages, hitting Yang Na's body one after another. A string of damage numbers floated above Yang Na's head. Although a shield warrior's damage wasn't high, an archer's HP wasn't high either. After a series of attacks, Yang Na's HP bar had been reduced by half. Without waiting for Yang Na to land, Athena's spear began to charge up. The moment Yang Na landed, Athena's right hand, which had finished charging up, thrust the spear forward. Boom! A dazzling aura shot towards Yang Na, sticking close to the ground. Awakening. Invincible. A line of large words floated above Athena's head. As an awakening skill of an expert like Athena, there was no doubt that it was invincible. The powerful Do Chi carved a deep trench in the ground, and the scorching flames crashed into Yang Na's body. After taking a series of combo attacks from Athena, Yang Na was already in a critical state. Being hit by such a powerful skill, it was certain that she wouldn't survive. Anyone who had watched Ragtag Team's matches would have seen Yang Na's strength. Although Yang Na was a female player, her performance was extremely high. She was even stronger than a top-tier professional player. Now, she was killed by Athena in less than 5 minutes. It was clear how strong Athena was, as expected of the world's #1 shield warrior. However, just when the audience thought that Yang Na was dead for sure, a question mark popped up in Athena's head. As an expert, Athena's feeling of being hit by her skill told her that her ultimate skill had missed. Not good. Without a second thought, Athena turned to the left, grabbed her shield, and turned around. Pooh! But it was too late. Yang Na, who was behind Athena, had already pounced on her face and launched an attack. A crossbow bolt pierced Athena's face. Athena's temperament was cold and elegant, and her appearance was beautiful. However, at this moment, there was an arrow in her head, and her head was swaying back and forth. The scene was truly irresistible. Athena naturally knew how embarrassing she was. She was extremely angry and subconsciously covered her face with her shield. Yang Na, on the other hand, moved to Athena's side, raised her crossbow, and shot another arrow at Athena's face. It wasn't hard to see that the two women on the stage seemed to be in a frenzy. They kept hitting each other's faces and wanted nothing more than to disfigure each other. Wake up, girls, this is a game. Even if you splash acid on your face, you won't be disfigured. As an archer, Yang Na's main attribute was agility, so her movement speed was extremely fast. Athena, because of her class's speed disadvantage, could barely keep up with Yang Na's movement speed. However, once Yang Na used her ancestral movement technique, her entire body was erratic, and no one knew where she would appear. This made it difficult for Athena to guard against her. After one round, Athena's face was full of crossbow bolts. Her beautiful and aloof face was full of crossbow bolts, and she looked like a hedgehog. Ah, what the F***CK. Seeing this, the members of the motley crowd battle team started laughing so hard that they were out of breath. F***CK. F***CK. Is this woman the devil? Does she have to be so ruthless? As for the audience, they were even more frightened. In the past few matches, Yang Na had thoroughly shown the audience what it meant to be cruel. Really, her role had limited everyone's imagination of what it meant to be cruel. Think back to Yang Na's battles. The first time she faced an enemy, she directly pierced her opponent's eye. The second time she faced an enemy, she tortured her opponent to death with arrows. The third time she faced an enemy, she greeted her opponent's face with arrows and turned a beautiful woman into a hedgehog. The so-called tragedy was to tear a beautiful thing apart for others to see. For a woman, especially a beautiful woman, Yang Na's behavior was definitely worse than death. Of course, this matter couldn't be blamed on Yang Na. Athena was also a bit too much. She first used her shield to hit Yang Na's face. Yang Na was a petty person, so of course she would take revenge. Everyone in Xuanzhen was honest people. Although everyone had their own personality flaws, their attitude towards hatred was to take revenge on the spot. If they couldn't take revenge on the spot, they would take revenge every day. After being in Xuanzhen for so long, Yang Na had long been assimilated. After a few more arrows, the health bar on Athena's head was also reduced by half. Seeing that there was no place to attack her opponent's face, Yang Na couldn't help but hesitate. This hesitation didn't matter, and Athena finally found an opportunity to counterattack. "Huh!" Athena let out a roar, and the ground beneath their feet cracked. The crossbow in Yang Na's hand shook slightly and fell to the ground. Raging wars in all directions. What's going on? Seeing this scene, Wang Yu was puzzled and asked the others. Wang Yu had done things like stealing weapons before, but Wang Yu had done it with pure skill. However, Athena just roared and took away her opponent's weapon. This was a little too ridiculous. As a martial artist, her weapon was her life. It was impossible for Yang Na to lose her grip on her weapon after being yelled at by someone. Disarm. It's disarm. Wuji, who was by the side, explained. Disarm was an extremely rare skill effect in Rebirth. This effect could temporarily disable the opponent from using their weapon. Who would have thought that Athena's raging wars in all directions would have such a terrifying effect? For a moment, Wuji was worried about Yang Na. After all, Yang Na wasn't any other class. Among all the classes, archers were definitely the class that relied on weapons the most. Without a weapon, mages and warriors could still cast spells with their bare hands. Without a weapon, could an archer use arrows as a hidden weapon? That's a little too ridiculous. Seeing that Yang Na had lost her weapon, Athena casually waved the arrow off her face. She glared at Yang Na and gritted her teeth. "I'll return the humiliation just now." As she spoke, Athena raised the spear in her right hand and flicked the crossbow away. She then swung the shield in her left hand at Yang Na. "Umph." Yang Na snorted coldly. Her eyes narrowed into slits. Chapter 1936. Is the show about to start? Seeing the expression on Yang Na's face, Wang Yu and the others revealed a look of anticipation. Having been partners with Yang Na for so long, everyone knew her little habits. She was usually well-behaved, but once she narrowed her eyes, it meant that she was angry. Angry women were always terrifying to the point of being unreasonable. As expected, Yang Na met Athena's shield with her bare fists. Damn, how can an archer play like this? Seeing Yang Na's unreasonable behavior, the audience's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. It was understandable for an archer to play melee. After all, online games had developed for so many years, and there were all kinds of eccentric players. But an archer didn't even have a weapon, and yet she was fighting a shield warrior with her bare hands. This was a complete disregard for the rules of the system. Shield warriors were known as the kings of melee. Although their damage output wasn't high, they were extremely powerful in PvP. Not only did they have high defense and priority, but they could also restrain the strongest solo class, the assassin. No other melee class was stronger than shield warriors in melee combat. An archer threw away her weapon and fought a shield warrior with her bare hands. This was crazy. However, what everyone didn't know was that Yang Na was the same kind of person as Wang Yu's evildoers run wild. Archery was just a hobby for her, and fighting was her ultimate goal. Facing the oncoming shield, Yang Na moved her left hand forward and her right hand behind. She grabbed the edge of the shield with both hands and pulled, leveraging the force of the shield. At the same time, she lowered her body and brushed past the edge of the shield to dodge the attack. Ouch! Athena was a gaming expert, not a kung fu expert. Being pulled by Yang Na, the impact of the shield and the force of Yang Na's pull added together, and Athena was immediately caught off guard. Athena's figure swayed, and she lost her balance and fell forward. At this time, Yang Na twisted her legs and moved behind Athena in a strange way. Before Athena could react, Yang Na raised her foot and kicked Athena's butt. Athena, who had lost her balance, was trying her best to quick recover. Who knew that she would suffer another kick in the butt, so she was involuntarily kicked to the ground by Yang Na. Yang Na followed closely behind. She stepped on Athena's right shoulder and pulled Athena's ponytail in her right hand. Then, Yang Na's left hand touched her thigh, pulled out a crossbow bolt, and inserted it between Athena's left shoulder and neck. Although Yang Na's strength wasn't as great as Athena's, the position that Yang Na was attacking was called the scapula. The scapula was also known as the scapula. It was a joint that was specially used to dispel people's strength. Rebirth was a holographic simulation online game. Although it wasn't 100% realistic, many details were well done. Without the feeling of pain, the scapula was not very useful. However, Athena's scapula was pierced, and Yang Na was pulling her braid. It was difficult for her to hold the weapon with both hands to attack. If you're not convinced, you could try it on your own girlfriend. Anyway, Uncle Nyo can't guarantee the consequences. Of course, you have to have a girlfriend first. As the world's #1 shield warrior, Athena could be said to be arrogant. It was such a humiliation to be pinned to the ground. However, no matter how hard Athena struggled, she couldn't hit Yang Na. Is this woman stupid? Seeing that Athena was pinned to the ground by Yang Na and had her hair pulled, Mingdu was speechless. Can't she just get up? With her strength, it shouldn't be difficult. Hee hee. Wang Yu smiled and said, she can't get up. The Yang family's kung fu is the best at smoothing things over. Hey, what do you mean? It would have been better if Wang Yu didn't say anything. His explanation made everyone even more confused. Her strength has been dispelled. At this time, evildoers run wild gave the answer helplessly. It seemed that it was a bit difficult to expect this group of mortals to understand the theory. Although they still didn't understand much, they could roughly guess what had happened. Athena's brute force must have been dispelled by Yang Na using some kind of kung fu. If it was in the past, no one would believe it. However, after interacting with Wang Yu for a long time, they had no choice but to believe it. They can't just keep stepping on them, right? Mingdu rubbed his chin and said, even if they are beauties, we don't have to come here to watch wrestling. That's impossible. Wang Yu said, as long as the opponent is willing to put down the weapon in their hand, they can turn around without any obstacles. This is called disarming. F***CK. Is that so? Hearing Wang Yu's explanation, everyone sighed. It seemed that ordinary people were far from being able to play tricks in front of a kung fu master. As soon as Wang Yu finished speaking, Athena seemed to hear Wang Yu's words. She loosened her grip and threw the spear and shield in her hands to the side. Without a weapon, Athena's free hands flipped backward and grabbed Yang Na's leg. Yang Na's strength was inferior to Athena's, and her leg was caught by Athena's chest. Caught off guard, Yang Na fell to the ground. Athena took the opportunity to sit up and face-to-face with Yang Na. She stretched out her hand and slapped Yang Na's cheeks twice. Pia, Pia. The crisp sound pierced the ears of the audience. Whoa! Seeing this scene, everyone's eyes widened and their faces revealed a surprised expression. Hitting someone in the face was not an option, let alone a woman. Slapping her opponent twice in front of everyone's eyes seemed to have driven Athena mad. Yang Na wasn't one to show weakness. In her anger, she didn't care that she was a martial artist. She aimed her hands at Athena's face and grabbed. Rip! Yang Na's claws left 10 bloody marks on Athena's cheeks. 666, the audience began to cheer. The two girls' attacks were beyond the scope of a game battle. It was just a competition, and winning or losing was only a matter of points. But now, the two were fighting for real. Go to hell, Athena roared. Relying on her great strength, she pushed Yang Na's arm away and punched Yang Na's chest. Fortunately, Yang Na's chest was small, and the injury wasn't too serious. She only rolled backwards. Yang Na's hands weren't idle either. The moment she rolled, she grabbed Athena's dress. Rip! There was another strange sound. Athena's dress was torn open by Yang Na, and her snow-white skin was exposed. Ugh! Looking at Athena's chest, the audience fell into deep thought. Couldn't they think about it? Fashion was expensive, and women's fashion was only made of rags. Based on area, it was more expensive than gold. Yang Na's claws had destroyed 30% of Athena's fashion. What a waste. Chapter 1937. There is a reason why there were so few female players in top-tier tournaments. After all, a tournament of this level required a high level of mental fortitude. Players who could participate were all rational enough. Comparatively speaking, females were more emotional. After so many years of esport competition, there were many female players who cried on the spot after being abused. Such an unstable state of mind had a huge impact on their performance. No matter how strong a player was, it was useless if they could not perform consistently. That was why top-tier clubs rarely signed female players. Athena was an exception. This girl had been through hundreds of battles. Whether it was her strength or her state of mind, she was steady. She had never had a problem for so many years. Who knew that she would end up like this in the first match? They were supposed to be two valiant and formidable-looking girls, and the match should have been particularly pleasing to the eye. But now, the two of them were unarmed and barehanded in an epic melee fight. You give me a slap, I'll give you a slap. You pull my hair, I'll tear your clothes. The scene was too horrible to look at. It was exactly the same as an original wife beating up a mistress on the street. Everyone who was watching was dumbfounded. What kind of fighting style was this? It was too down to earth. Seeing that the match was getting more and more unreliable, the system could not bear to watch any longer. It gave the two a yellow card for being uncivilized. Seeing the two of them leave the stage, the audience let out a sigh of relief. This kind of fighting style was too scary. Even when she was sent off the stage, Yang Na was still angry. She protested, "System, pull my hand or I'll kill her." Yang Na was in a fit of anger, but no one dared to provoke her. Everyone lowered their heads in silence. In the end, it was still Wuji who was reliable. "All right, I know you're good, but you might not win even if you keep fighting. The system is helping you." "Nonsense." Yang Na's face darkened. "I can fight 7 or 8 people at that level with one hand. If you don't believe me, let's try after the match." "Forget it." Hearing Yang Na's words, Wuji's face turned green. This girl was usually a lady. Why did she become so reckless when she was angry? She even wanted to PK someone in real life. But made sense. After being slapped twice in front of so many people, no one would be able to act like nothing had happened. Otherwise, it would be too shameless. "I'm talking about the game." Wuji explained. "She's a shield bearer. She has high HP and defense. Even if she's unarmed, she's still a melee class. You're an archer. It would be strange if you could win against her." This, after being lectured by Wuji, Yang Na finally calmed down. In fact, if it were a real melee fight, it wouldn't be too difficult for Yang Na to kill Athena with her skills. However, Yang Na was furious. How could an archer possibly win a wrestling match with a shield warrior? After all, archers were a class that relied on their weapons. Compared to melee classes, they were far inferior. Although the system didn't have any intention of pulling the strings, it was still beneficial to Yang Na. This bastard. On Pantheon's side, Athena was infuriated as well. This was the first time she had been bullied like this in the gaming circle for so many years. Although shield warriors were known to have the strongest armor and receive the most vicious attacks, they still needed to maintain their dignity. Yet, a mere archer actually dared to engage in melee combat with him. Furthermore, His attacks were neither light nor heavy. This was too much. Nominally, Wang Yu was the captain of motley crowd. In fact, the real captain was still Wu Ji. The captain's biggest responsibility was to appease the team members. Uranus was also sweating profusely. It took him a long time to appease Athena's anger. It couldn't be helped. Shield bearers were the most important class in a team battle. If Athena didn't adjust her emotions and went into battle, Pantheon would definitely be at a disadvantage. After appeasing the two hot-tempered girls, the system reminded both teams again. Please choose your next player. Old Devil, you're up for the second round. Wu Ji pointed at Evildoers Run Wild without hesitation and confirmed the next player. At this point, the strength of motley crowd had been seen through. They were almost transparent. In the face of an opponent like Pantheon, there was no need to hide at all. They just had to follow the simplest and most brutal order and rush forward. Anyway, tricks and tricks would not be of much use in front of an expert like Pantheon. With a flash of light, Evildoers Run Wild and his opponent appeared in the arena. Evildoers Run Wild's opponent was holding a scythe-like weapon with a chain tied to the handle. It looked very strange, but it was not strange for a disciple of a martial arts family who dabbled in all kinds of weapons. Scythe was a strange weapon and belonged to the soft rope category. What surprised Evildoers Run Wild was that there was such a thing in the game. This person looks familiar. Wang Yu rubbed his chin and stared at Evildoers Run Wild's opponent. He muttered to himself, I really want to fight with him. Really? Bao San, who was next to Wang Yu, was surprised. What was the result? What do you think? Wang Yu raised his eyebrows and asked. Awesome. Bao San gave a sincere thumbs up and sighed. I didn't expect Ares to be defeated by you. Ares? Wang Yu thought for a while and said, this kid has such a tongue-twisting name. So you know him too? Of course, Bao San said confidently. This is the world's #1 warrior. How can I not know him? World's #1. Wang Yu was speechless. Don't you have any shame? You said that the shield bearer was the world's #1, and now this warrior is also the world's #1? Are they all #1 in Pantheon? You're right about that. Wu Ji smiled and said, how do you think the name Pantheon came about? No doubt the players in their team are all the world's #1 in each class. TCH. Without waiting for Wang Yu to say anything, To Place One's Pride curled his lips in disdain and looked at his fist. I don't believe it. Are they also the world's #1 in Grandmaster of Combat? Well, everyone looked at Wang Yu meaningfully and quickly said, I'm afraid they're far from it. To Place One's Pride was bragging. It was obvious that everyone was looking at Wang Yu and felt depressed. To Place One's Pride did not dare to challenge Wang Yu's strength. He could only add resentfully, they won't be the world's #2. Of course. Everyone nodded and turned their attention to Evildoers Run Wild in the arena. The implication was that he would not even be the team's #2, let alone the world's #2. F***CK. To Place One's Pride was in tears. Just as everyone was talking nonsense, the two on the stage had already started fighting. Weapon battles were different from shield bearers. As a damage output class, weapon battles were about attacking first. Ares swung his scythe and slashed at Evildoers Run Wild from 5 meters away. Chapter 1938. His attack range is so far. Seeing Ares attack Evildoers Run Wild from 5 meters away, everyone was shocked. The warrior class had high attack and defense. Pro-level experts usually added agility, so their speed was not weak. The only flaw was their attack range. Therefore, the warrior class had always been afraid of being kited by range classes, especially ice mages, who could control and attack at the same time. They were basically the warrior's nemesis. However, Ares' normal attack range was a full 5 meters. A warrior with such long arms was unheard of. One had to know that the basic casting distance of a mage was only 10 meters. With such long arms, a warrior was not giving a chance to a ranged class. Of course, Evildoers Run Wild was not an ordinary person. Such an attack was useless against Evildoers Run Wild. Evildoers Run Wild grabbed Ares' scythe in his hand. Immediately after, Evildoers Run Wild exerted force in his arm and yanked backwards. Evildoers Run Wild was famous for his extraordinary strength. Moreover, the pugilist's ferocious tiger strike was a grab skill. Not to mention Ares' agility, even a full-powered warrior would not be able to withstand Evildoers Run Wild's pull. Crash! With a crash, Ares, who was 5 meters away, was pulled in front of Evildoers Run Wild. Without waiting for Ares to land on the ground, the evildoer Hung Shing threw a punch at Ares' head with his other hand. That's it. Seeing Ares being pulled by Evildoers Run Wild, just like that, everyone could not help but feel a little regretful. Who was Evildoers Run Wild? Since the last match, no one had been able to withstand 3 punches from Evildoers Run Wild. He was nicknamed the Farmer's 3 Punches. With this pull and punch, the combination of the two forces would definitely shatter Ares' head with one punch. Seeing Ares' stunning performance in the match, they did not expect him to be defeated. However, Ares was known as the #1 warrior in the world. Naturally, he was not easy to deal with. Just when the audience thought that Evildoers Run Wild would pull Ares in front of him and punch him to death, Ares' left hand faced the ground, and a wave of combat energy slashed the ground. The recoil of the aura cut forced Ares to make a turn in midair, brushing past Evildoers Run Wild and landing behind Evildoers Run Wild. Seeing that Ares dodged his attack, Evildoers Run Wild was a little surprised, so he immediately turned around and attacked. Ares lowered his head and flashed past the other side of Evildoers Run Wild. Each of them grabbed one end of the scythe and twisted it in the opposite direction. The scythe was silently tied to Evildoers Run Wild's body. Hiss! Ares, who had successfully circled around Evildoers Run Wild, made a strange sound. The scythe that tied Evildoers Run Wild suddenly tightened like a python, binding Evildoers Run Wild tightly. At this time, Ares stretched his left hand behind his back and grabbed another scythe that shone brightly. This scythe lock was clearly a divine artifact, and it was much better than the one that was used to bind the evildoer rampage. How insidious! Seeing that Evildoers Run Wild was tied up, Wuji sighed helplessly. In terms of conduct, Evildoers Run Wild was a wily old fox, but his combat IQ was far from Wang Yu's. Moreover, Evildoers Run Wild put all his points into strength, so his agility was far from Wang Yu's. Obviously, Ares also knew this, so he prepared 2 weapons. The first was thrown out to tie up Evildoers Run Wild's main control, and the other was the main damage output. As the evildoer Hung Shing was not agile enough, he was tied up like a crab before he realized what was going on. Seeing that it was so easy to tie up Evildoers Run Wild, Ares' face showed a proud smile. He immediately swung the scythe in his right hand a few times, stretched it forward, and the scythe slashed at Evildoers Run Wild's head. Evildoers Run Wild was not in a hurry. He tilted his body and dodged the flying scythe. When Ares saw this, he pulled back the scythe and slashed at Evildoers Run Wild's neck from behind. Evildoers Run Wild's head tilted slightly, and at the same time, he leaned back. Clang! There was a sound of gold and iron colliding. Ares felt numb between his thumb and index finger, and he almost stumbled. Seeing this scene, Ares could not help but widen his eyes. The people of Pantheon below the stage were also shocked. Although Ares didn't see what was going on, the others saw it clearly. Just as the scythe slashed at Evildoers Run Wild, Evildoers Run Wild's head tilted, and he used the iron chain tied to his neck to block Ares' scythe. Blocking was a necessary skill for masters. If it was a frontal attack, everyone present could easily block the scythe with the iron chain. However, Ares' scythe was hooked from behind, and Evildoers Run Wild was able to accurately block it. This judgment was simply shocking. Count yourself lucky. In this situation, Ares thought that Evildoers Run Wild was lucky, so he pulled back the scythe again and continued to attack Evildoers Run Wild. Although Ares was more flexible, Ares was standing at a distance to attack. His attacks did not turn, so masters at the level of Evildoers Run Wild could judge the landing point of the attack. He only needed to move his body slightly to easily block it. Ding ding dang dang. Ares slashed 5 or 6 times in a row, and all of them were blocked by evildoers run wild. Ares' face turned black directly. Evildoers run wild saw this and laughed. It's just a small trick. Do you really think it can deal with me? As he said this, evildoers run wild exerted force with both arms. Zap! At the same time, the iron chain that bound evildoers run wild straightened and made a harsh friction sound. What are you trying to do? Ares' heart skipped a beat, and he could not help but take a step back. Duan! At this moment, with a loud sound, the iron chain on evildoers run wild was directly broken. What the F***CK? Seeing this scene, the crowd suddenly erupted. The chain scythe was a weapon. Although it was not as strong as a shield of a shield warrior, it was not easy to damage it. In particular, the iron chain that bound evildoers run wild was as thick as the mouth of a bottle. It looked extremely strong at first glance, but unexpectedly, it was directly broken by evildoers run wild. The shock of the scene was no less than breaking a shield with bare hands. What the F***CK is adding points to strength is crazy. Go! After breaking the iron chain, evildoers run wild grabbed the scythe and swung it fiercely. Whoosh! The scythe in the hands of evildoers run wild slashed at Ares with a powerful sound. Clatter! Ares gritted his teeth, pulled his arms, and the chain scythe in his hands protected in front of him. Clang! A clear sound. The scythe was blocked by the iron chain and bounced dozens of meters away. As for Ares, it was as if he was hit by a train. He could not stand steadily and only managed to stabilize his body after taking 7 or 8 steps back. Chapter 1939. Just as Ares steadied himself, evildoers run wild had already rushed over with heavy footsteps. Ran we? N, W, 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 R, A, N, W. Aina, when he was a few meters away from Ares. Evildoers run wild leaped and used collapsing fist dash. Ares' eyes tightened. He swung the scythe in his hand up and down, aiming at evildoers run wild chin. The reason why grandmasters of combat were criticized, other than the fact that they could not do all 10 skills, the most disgusting thing was that jumping had an enhanced effect on attacking or releasing skills. When 2 people were fighting, the most taboo was to levitate in the air. Jumping to attack was basically sending one's head to the sky. Unless the attack was extremely confident, most grandmasters of combat would rather not enhance their attacks than take the initiative to jump. Evildoers run wild did not know Qigong. In the face of the flying scythe, he could not avoid it and could only reach out to grab it. Upon seeing this, Ares immediately opened his mouth and spat out a cloud of black mist. The black mist expanded rapidly. Just as evildoers run wild was about to grab the scythe, the black mist had already expanded to evildoers run wild and engulfed him in an instant. At the same time, the scythe in Ares' hand shook and the scythe was retrieved. Hidden fog. After retrieving the scythe, Ares held up his left hand, and the black mist wrapped around evildoers run wild and flew into the sky. The spreading of the black mist did not stop. When the black mist flew to a high altitude, it had already filled the entire sky of the arena. The sky was dark, like a dark cloud covering half of it. Sky-destroying cut. Following Ares' shout, the scythe in Ares' hand flew straight up and slashed at the dark cloud in the sky. At the same time, a line of words flashed above Ares' head. Profound meaning. Hidden fog destroying cut. In Ares' eyes, the reason why evildoers run wild was able to block his weapon was that this guy had quick reflexes and could block his attack according to the angle of his attack. Now that evildoers run wild was surrounded and controlled by the black fog, not only could he not move, but he had also completely lost his vision. This time, he would definitely not be able to avoid this ultimate skill. Whoosh! Under everyone's gaze, Ares' scythe turned into a cold light and cut through the sky. The dark clouds in the sky were like a piece of black cloth that had been cut into 2 under Ares' attack. Putting aside the power of this skill for now, the visual effect was absolutely unique. Splitting the dark clouds in the sky with a single slash was like splitting the heavens and earth, shocking everyone. However, Just as evildoers run wild was cut in half, the scythe in his hand suddenly sank. Ares was shocked and quickly raised his head. He saw evildoers run wild in the sky, grabbing the scythe with one hand. Under the pull of the two's strength, the chain straightened. How is this possible? Seeing that not only did evildoers run wild not die, but he also grabbed his weapon again, Ares' eyes almost popped out. He obviously had no vision. How could it be blocked? This was illogical. What he didn't know was that although evildoers run wild was not as talented as Wang Yu, he was also a rising star in the younger generation of Kung Fu. With his perception, it was easy to perceive an attack flying in front of him. Ares used the logic of ordinary people to deal with evildoers run wild. Of course, it was asking to be humiliated. Earth-splitting kick. In midair, evildoers run wild pulled the scythe in his hand, and his whole body fell at a very fast speed. At the same time, his feet emitted a terrifying light. The release of Earth-splitting kick and thunder stomp were almost the same. The difference was that Earth-splitting kick was an earth attribute, and the special effect was a knockback, while thunder stomp was a thunder attribute. After releasing the skill, evildoers run wild suddenly fell from the sky, and in an instant, his big foot stepped on Ares' face. Ares wanted to dodge, but it was too late. Bang! With a loud noise, Ares was trampled on by evildoers run wild, lying on the ground, and his head was trampled into the ground. Boom! When evildoers run wild landed, the ground trembled, and Ares, who was lying on the ground, was shaken and sent flying. One move. No one knew where the audience learned this bad habit, but they loved to play the supporting role. As soon as evildoers run wild hit, everyone began to count. Hell's fire wheel. Without waiting for Ares to fall, evildoers run wild jumped and grabbed Ares in midair. Then evildoers run wild exerted force in his arms, and his body leaned back. The two of them spun and flew high. 2 moves. The audience continued to jeer. When the two of them flew to the highest point, the HP bar above Ares' head was less than a third, and he was also stunned by evildoers run wild. Looking at the ground, evildoers run wild flipped Ares, who was in his arms, and Ares suddenly fell headfirst. Profound martial lianhua. A line of words flashed in evildoers run wild's eyes, and he dragged Ares down from the sky. Boom! The two of them landed, and the ground was cracked by evildoers run wild stomp. As for Ares, he was upside down, and evildoers run wild threw him into the ground. Wu Lianhua had been used by Wang Yu during a Qinggong mission before, but at that time, Wang Yu used it as Kung Fu. This time, in the hands of evildoers run wild, it was in profound skill. Wang Yu could already beat the boss half to death without the system skill enhancement, let alone evildoers run wild, who was using the profound skill of a grandmaster of combat. 3 moves. Under the jeering of the audience, Ares' HP bar was emptied on the spot, and he turned into a stream of light and disappeared from the arena. In the second round, the motley crew evildoers run wild won, and the current score was 1-0. Boss, this is what you did. Seeing that Ares was killed by evildoers run wild, the members of Pantheon turned their heads and looked at Uranus with a dark expression. F***CK, he's so ruthless. Is this bastard going to take the money without doing anything? With the motley crew style, it was not unusual for them to do such a thing. Don't worry, don't worry. Uranus wiped his sweat and said, it's an act, so it has to be realistic. Otherwise, the gap will be too big. Realistic? Are you sure? Everyone was skeptical. Realistic? Absolutely realistic. Uranus said, he signed a contract. Would he dare to go back on his word? Let's see how he's going to survive in the industry. Is that so? Then let's see his next match. Hearing that he had signed the contract, the others were relieved. Fixing matches was not a common thing in the industry. Although it was against the rules, once there was a contract, if one did not do anything after receiving money, he would be despised by everyone in the industry. Let's see if any team would dare to hire such a dishonest person in the future. With the influence of Pantheon, with such an exaggeration, evildoers run wild would definitely not be able to compete for the rest of his life. To be able to become the captain of a strong team like Pantheon, Uranus's methods were quite ruthless. Umph. On the Motley Crue's side, Wuji could not help but smirk when he saw how evildoers run wild through Ares to death. P.S. Fellow readers, I'm a mortal Iron Ox. I recommend a free app that supports downloading, listening to books, zero ads, and multiple reading modes. Dear readers, please pay attention to it. Chapter 1940. In the first match, the ragtag team continued to use their usual three-pronged strategy. In the third match, they unsurprisingly used their strongest move, Wang Yu. Pantheon had also expected this, so they didn't deliberately choose a player for the third match. Everyone had witnessed Wang Yu's strength in the previous match. He was able to completely suppress the 7 heroes of the Templar battle team all by himself. Although the players from Pantheon were strong, their individual strength was only slightly stronger than the players from the Templar battle team. In terms of one-on-one duels, Wang Yu is definitely the undisputed #1 in the world. No one present could surpass him. The Pantheon players didn't dare to doubt this. Since they were going to lose anyway, it didn't matter who they sent. Uranus thought for a while and went to the arena himself. It wasn't unreasonable for Uranus to be the captain of the Pantheon team. The Pantheon players were all famous experts and treasured their faces very much. Although they knew that Wang Yu was strong and it wasn't embarrassing to lose to him, no one wanted to be slapped in the face. Of course, Uranus knew this, so he went to the arena himself and didn't put his subordinates in a difficult position. His behavior made the others feel good about him. When the audience saw Uranus and Wang Yu appear in the arena at the same time, they were filled with anticipation. It was needless to say how strong Wang Yu was. Regardless of whether the ragtag team won the championship, the title of the world's #1 expert would definitely belong to someone else. Uranus was known as Firmament's Light and was the captain of an all-star super team like Pantheon. If the Pantheon players represented the Pantheon, then Uranus would be the lord of the Pantheon. To be able to be the boss of this group of gods, one could imagine his strength. For these two to meet in the finals in a one-on-one duel, it was definitely an epic battle between kings. It was the pinnacle battle between the king of the previous generation and the king of the next generation. Such a high-level competition was naturally worthy of the attention of everyone. For the audience, it was worth the ticket price to be able to watch this match. After entering the arena, the two stood on the street. Uranus looked serious, as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Wang Yu's expression was calm and dignified. With a gust of wind, the countdown ended and the match began. Wang Yu's eyes narrowed as she leaped toward Uranus. Just as everyone was waiting to see the outcome of the match, Uranus saw Wang Yu rushing over and, subconsciously, took a few steps back. He quickly raised his hands and shouted, "I'm willing to admit defeat." Hearing Uranus' words, the audience spat out a mouthful of blood. Mother **, what the hell? Everyone is waiting to see you fight to the death in the arena. UF** King admit defeat. It was as though the table had been kicked over by someone when they were about to start a game of mahjong. One could imagine the emotions of the audience. They could not wait to rush onto the stage, press Uranus to the ground, and give him a good beating. The members of the 9 Provinces team who had yet to leave were also puzzled. F***CK. What the hell is Uranus doing? Weren't you very arrogant when you were beating us? Why are you terrified when you see this kid? It should be a thought. 3 Mountains 5 Peaks said with certainty, I heard that experts don't even need to fight. They can fight for 300 rounds with just their thoughts. Is that true? Why can't I? The members of the 9 Provinces team were at a loss. In terms of strength, the members of the 9 Provinces team were not much weaker than Uranus. Maybe it's because you guys are not strong enough. 3 Mountains 5 Peaks started show off. Forget it. 5 Lakes 4 Seas was speechless. How old are you to be so chinibyu? It's obvious that Uranus doesn't want to reveal his trump card. Hiding his strength, 3 Mountains 5 Peaks mocked mercilessly. Although that Iron Ox is not a good guy, with his strength, what difference does it make if Uranus hides his strength? What do you know? 5 Lakes 4 Seas rolled his eyes at 3 Mountains 5 Peaks. At the same time, Wuji was also explaining to the Chuanjin team, with Old Cow's strength, it's useless for Pantheon to win this match head-on. They can only take him by surprise. Uranus is not only hiding his strength, he doesn't even want Old Cow to know about his class. F***CK, that's too treacherous. Everyone pointed their middle fingers at Uranus. However, Wuji lamented, he knows how to endure, but he might be hiding his strength. This guy is not easy to deal with. They are on their home ground for the third match. If we let him take command, even with Old Cow, our chances of winning are not high. F***CK, you mean that your strategy is not even as good as his? What a piece of trash. The greatest strength of the Chuanjin team was that they could always find opportunities to attack their companions. Wuji's words were only meant to show that Uranus was resourceful and able to adapt to circumstances. In the end, the Chuanjin team quickly changed the subject and started to look down on Wuji together. Wuji was not someone who was easy to deal with. No. Wuji waved his hand and said, the key to a team battle is the strength of the team. No matter how strong Old Cow and I are, we can't carry a bunch of idiots, don't you think so? If I have a team with the same strength, I can beat him up. F***CKU. Everyone was enraged when they heard this. Amidst the curses of the audience, Wang Yu is also teleported out of the arena. Logically speaking, Wang Yu came here to compete not only to show off his skills, but also to find a few decent opponents. However, for some reason, all the players who faced him in the past few matches did not even think about it. They either ran all over the map with tricks or directly surrendered. This made Wang Yu very bored. It was not easy to meet a slightly stronger opponent, but he was not given a chance to perform. Wang Yu felt very lonely. Not only was he invincible in real life, but he also could not find an opponent in the game. No one could understand this feeling. Fortunately, there were many god-tier bosses in the game who were not weak and would not run away. After the match, he must find a few big bosses to vent his anger on. That was what Wang Yu thought. As soon as Wang Yu thought of this, the big bosses in the game who were hiding in various forbidden areas felt their scalps go numb for no reason. After 3 matches, the motley crew temporarily led Pantheon with a score of 2-0. However, everyone also knew that the motley crew had used up their trump card. Next, it was time for them to give away points. Before the 4th match began, Wuji said earnestly, try not to be obsessed with fighting in the following matches. Just go up and surrender. Why? Everyone looked puzzled. Our strength has long been known by others. Do we still have to hide our strength? Look at what you said, Wuji said disdainfully. Even if you want to hide, you need to have the ability to do so. I made you surrender to hide your weaknesses, in case you get targeted in the competition. At that time, Old Cow and I will have to take care of you trash. F***CKU. The motley crew, who were looked down upon, clenched their fists. If not for the competition, Wuji might have been beaten to death by the crowd. Chapter 1941. Of course, they still had to listen to Wuji's arrangements if they wanted to win the competition. After all, no one was willing to go against money. In terms of strength, Wuji was only average, but in terms of strategy, everyone trusted him. On Templar's side, Uranus was also patiently arranging the players for the next round. Remember, killing them is not the goal. The goal is to find out their weakness bit by bit and get rid of them from the root. Understood. Everyone from Pantheon nodded their heads. Although the motley team was not good at 1v1, they were very good at team fights. If they could not find the opponent's weakness, it would not be easy for them to kill the others, even if they managed to stall Wang Yu in the last round. In the 4th round, Mingdu went up. After being teleported to the arena, Mingdu did not wait for the match to start and immediately chose to surrender. Pantheon's players did not even have time to react, and the match was over before it even started. F***CK. What the F***CK? Seeing that the 4th round was not successful, the audience could not hold it in anymore and started cursing and demanding for a refund. Whether it was a domestic or international professional league, the most important match was definitely the finals. Everyone spent so much money to buy tickets just to watch an exciting match. But in the end, these two teams were more shameless than the other, surrendering to each other. How could this even be called a match? Everyone was here to watch a fight, not to watch you guys stand there and then scram. Okay? Even the judges and referees could not stand it anymore and could not help but reprimand the two teams. Don't go overboard. If you continue surrendering like this, are you still going to fight? Whoever surrenders in the next round will be declared to have lost the entire match. Lost the entire match. It seemed that the behavior of surrendering in the finals was not good. The referees actually brought out the killer weapon of the entire match. This was equivalent to nullifying the surrender command. In fact, surrendering in a match was very normal. It was just that the finals was such an important match with high viewership and attendance. Surrendering would be very disappointing. Satisfying the audience was the most important thing. Who cared if it was a strategy or not? Moreover, surrendering was the highest sportsmanship. Surrendering at the drop of a hat was not in line with sportsmanship. No problem, no problem. Under the pressure of losing the entire match, both teams had no choice but to compromise. The competition continued. In the fifth round, Wuji personally went on stage. On the Pantheon side, the archer Apollo was also an old acquaintance of Wang Yu. In fact, Apollo could no longer be considered an archer. He could only be considered an archer because he didn't use a bow or a crossbow. He was a knife thrower. In terms of weapons, there are currently 4 main categories of archers: bow, crossbow, gun, flying knife. The longbow was a traditional archer's weapon. It had high attack and average shooting speed, but it had the longest range. The crossbow was relatively small. Its firing speed and attack power were average, but its accuracy was extremely high. Guns, on the other hand, were relatively niche. Their range and accuracy were not weak, but their firing rate was relatively slow, and their mobility was far inferior to bows and crossbows. Therefore, firearms could only be used as secondary weapons in most situations. On the other hand, flying dagger was a bit more special. Players of this genre had already broken away from the category of archers and were closer to assassins. Apart from having a shorter range, it could also be supplemented with various skills for combat. Its flexibility was much higher than that of a crossbow. Archers originally added points to agility. In addition to their high flexibility and various skills, flying dagger players were a bit like a combination of archers and assassins. Under normal circumstances, flying dagger players were also known as rangers. As a support class, Wuji's combat power was not high. Fighting against a class like ranger, which was specifically designed for PvP, was indeed a bit difficult. Wuji's combat style was still very clear. Everyone knew that this kid was good at self-destructing. As long as he pulled away from Wuji, there would basically be no problem. Although Apollo's range was not as good as an archer's, it was definitely longer than a mage's. Against Wuji, it could be considered a natural counter. In terms of battle record, Wuji was the truly amazing one. As a holy priest of a support class, he had actually not tasted defeat in a few one-on-one matches. It was one thing for Wang Yu to be invincible in one-on-one fights. After all, Wang Yu was a martial arts expert and a grandmaster. Moreover, a grandmaster combat was also a combat class. For a support class like Wuji to be able to achieve such results in an S-rank professional league was quite terrifying. Because of this, even though Apollo's class countered Wuji's, he was still quite afraid of Wuji's self-destructing style of fighting. At the start of the match, Apollo did not say anything and immediately pulled away from Wuji. Then, he threw throwing daggers at Wuji. It was a standard kiting style. Naturally, Wuji was not the kind of person to sit and wait for death. Facing Apollo's attack, Wuji casually raised his staff and a golden light covered his body. Holy Light Shield. Clang, 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 clang. When an invincible skill like Holy Light Shield was activated, it was impossible to take damage. Moreover, only an extremely high priority could slightly block it. Archers were not a class with high priority, and the throwing daggers had even lower priority. When they hit Wuji, they could not even do the most basic block. Staring at Apollo's throwing daggers, Wuji used fly and levitated towards Apollo. The city streets were just a crossroads. It was not too big. As an archer, Apollo's mobility was much higher than Wuji's, but in this small map, it was not very obvious. Moreover, Wuji was flying in the air, so it was extremely difficult for Apollo to pull away from him. In the time it took for the two to circle around each other, Wuji had already flown above Apollo. He pointed the staff in his hand and shot a white ray of light at Apollo. Martyrdom, a special skill of a priest. Its effect was similar to taunt, but it could be used in both directions. It could pull the target's attack onto oneself, and it could also be used to teleport oneself to the target side. With a flash of light, Wuji was teleported in front of Apollo. At the same time, Wuji's body emitted a weak holy light. As expected, is he going to self-destruct again? Seeing that Wuji had once again used such a despicable skill, the audience could not help but wipe the cold sweat off their foreheads for Apollo. They had played the game for a long time, but had never seen a player who could play the self-destruct style to such perfection. Martyrdom, reckoning. These were skills that showed the fearless spirit of a priest sacrificing himself to save the world. However, in the hands of Wuji, it was simply unbearable to watch. Even the game designers who were watching the match were starting to regret designing these two skills. Boom! With a loud bang, Wuji exploded on the spot. The area within a 500-meter radius was completely empty. However, to everyone's surprise, Apollo stood in front of Wuji unscathed. How? How is this possible? Seeing that Apollo was not killed by Wuji's explosion, the motley crew was shocked. Chapter 1942. As everyone knew, the priest's self-destruct dealt true damage. What was true damage? True damage meant that no matter how high your defense was, whether you had invincibility skills or not, everything would be useless in the face of true damage. Apollo was just a fragile archer with a relatively low HP. It was unbelievable that he did not die after taking a blow from Wuji. He dodged it. Just when everyone was surprised, Wang Yu touched his chin and said faintly, "Dodged it? What do you mean?" Hearing Wang Yu's words, everyone was stunned. It's an archer's skill. Isn't that skill called evasion? Wang Yu turned around and asked Yang Na. Yes. Yang Na nodded. Evasion? Could it be? This time, everyone understood what he meant. Although self-destruct was a skill that could not be blocked, it could be dodged. An archer's evasion skill was an evasive invincibility skill. At the moment when Wuji self-destructed, Apollo used evasion and just happened to dodge Wuji's skill before understanding what was going on. Everyone was just puzzled. Now that they understood what was going on, everyone's face showed a surprised expression. What the F***CK? Self-destruct was not a time bomb. At such a close distance, self-destruct would happen in an instant. To be able to dodge the self-destruct in a split second was no less difficult than dodging an incoming bullet. Although Apollo was an agility class, the main test of such a skill was his reaction speed. How strong must his reflexes be to be able to do that? The Pantheon Temple truly lived up to its name. Aside from Wang Yu and the other martial artists, none of the experts present could pull off Apollo's maneuver. Self-destruct consumed HP. After self-destruct, Wuji only had a little HP left. Apollo smiled and waved his hand. Puchi. Before Wuji could react, a flying knife had already pierced Wuji's throat. Wuji's HP bar was emptied on the spot. Oomph. Seeing that Wuji was dead, Apollo couldn't help but let out a cold snort. Is this the so-called self-destruct flow? Insignificant skill. If I knew it would be so easy, I wouldn't have been so nervous. However, before Apollo could finish his sentence, a violent explosion sounded in his ears. At the same time, Apollo felt as if his body had been hollowed out. The scene before his eyes flashed, and he appeared outside the arena. Wuji was the only one left in the arena with no HP left. He stood there with a cunning smile on his face. What the hell is going on? This time, the audience was even more surprised. Everyone had clearly seen Wuji being killed with a single slash. How did he suddenly self-destruct and kill Apollo? This didn't make sense. Could it be that there was a bug in the system? The system naturally did not want to be slandered for no reason, so it very considerately replayed the scene of the kill just now. In the slow-motion replay on the big screen, the killed Wuji was wrapped in a ball of white light. The health bar above his head was instantly restored to full, and then he self-destructed a second time. This is a F***king resurrection. Seeing the scene on the big screen, everyone's mouths were wide open, and their faces were blank. F***ck. I didn't expect this shameless guy to have such a trick up his sleeve. When he was killed, Wuji had already marked himself with a resurrection mark. When the player resurrected, his status would be completely refreshed. At the moment of death, Wuji resurrected with full health and immediately self-destructed a second time. Even though Apollo was well guarded, he didn't expect that there would be a double cannon for self-destruct. After figuring out how he died, Apollo felt like he had been F***ed. It was impossible to guard against. Why did this F***er have such a soft spot for self-destruct? After martyrdom and reckoning, the priest class had another skill that was tainted by Wuji. Everyone was a clergyman. Couldn't he have some feelings of saving the world? Turning all the redemption skills into a deceptive skill. Such a person as a priest had no morals at all. Evil, so evil. After a long while, the audience finally came to their senses. At this time, everyone's evaluation of Wuji had been completely changed. At first, they thought that Wuji was just a shameless self-destruct priest, but now they realized that this guy wasn't shameless at all. He was F***king evil from the inside out. At the end of the 5th round, the motley crew scored another point and finally won the first round with a score of 3-1. Wuji also maintained his record of 0 losses in solo battles. How shameless! Apollo was still depressed about the previous battle even after exiting the gaming cabin. It was said that experts would not be defeated by the same move twice, but as a veteran expert, one could imagine Apollo's mood after being blown up twice by such a move. Calm down, calm down. Uranus waved his hand and comforted Apollo. Everyone loses sometimes. Just be careful next time. This kind of move is a surprise attack, and once is enough. You're lucky to be blown up. How can you say that, boss? Hearing Uranus' words, Apollo was displeased. How is this comforting? This is just adding fuel to the fire. I've never seen anyone comfort someone like this. Think about it. Uranus explained calmly. After all, the first round was a solo battle. Even if someone were to die, it would only be you. If he used this move again in the last round, what do you think would happen? Apollo was suddenly speechless. Wasn't that right? The range of a priest's self-destruct wasn't small, and Wuji's HP was especially high. If he were to use a chain of self-destructs in the last round, other than the frontliners, no one else would be able to survive. Therefore, although it seemed like Wuji had won this round, he had actually exposed his trump card. It was only a gap of 2 points, but to be able to force his opponent to reveal his trump card, it was really worth it. In the lounge of the Motley Crew, the members of the Motley Crew were in a good mood. As an amateur team, to be able to achieve such a result in the first round against Pantheon was enough for them to brag about for the rest of their lives. In particular, Wuji's last attack, which caught them off guard, was regarded as a classic explosion by the wretched and shameless guys. As expected of Wuji, this level of shamelessness is definitely a role model for our generation. Yes, I thought I was shameless enough. I didn't expect Wuji to be even more shameless. That's right. In terms of shamelessness, Wuji is the most shameless. Everyone in Chuanjin gave a thumbs up and praised Wuji from the bottom of their hearts. Wang Yu and his brother, who were sitting at the side, could only watch with their mouths agape. You guys from Chuanjin sure praise people in a special way. It's good to get used to it. It's good to get used to it. Wang Yu wiped his sweat. Oh, right. At this moment, Wang Yu seemed to have thought of something and asked puzzledly, Wuji, didn't you say that you wanted to hide your strength? Why did you reveal your trump card so early? P.S. I caught a cold and have a fever. Chapter 1943. It's not the same. Wuji smiled indifferently. I'm giving them a target to divert their attention. The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. This was a very simple principle. If everyone had no flaws, the opponent would definitely be wary of everyone in the Motley gang. But now that Wuji had revealed his trump card, even if the opponent did not deliberately target Wuji, they would still be wary of Wuji and would instinctively ignore the others. The motley crowd battle team were all very smart. They naturally knew what Wuji was thinking. After the break, the second match was up. The map for the second match was chosen by the Motley Gang. The Motley Gang were not professionals, so they did not need to be shameless. Their goal was very clear, which was to win the match, so they did not care about the feelings of the audience and their opponents. The map for the second match was chosen by Wang Yu under Wuji's instructions. The old map, Lost Forest. Damn it, seeing that the Motley Gang chose this map again, the audience's hearts suddenly sank. According to the usual style of this group, it seemed that everyone would have to enjoy a large-scale game of hide-and-seek in the next 5 matches. The Pantheon side was also extremely helpless. Although strength was very important to the players, if the map was chosen well, it could indeed anger the experts to death. Obviously, the Motley Gang were such a group of scoundrels. Their combat strength was not much, but their ability to escape was more and more professional. Choosing such a large map, even a team of experts like Pantheon would have a headache. But what could they do? The use of tactics was also a part of strength. As experts, everyone understood this principle. Since the opponent was running for his life, then he would chase with his life. If he could not catch up, he could only blame himself for not being good enough. After choosing the battlefield, 2 beams of light descended from the sky. After a flash, the players of both sides appeared on the battlefield at the same time. The contestant from Pantheon was called Prometheus, a mage. However, he was different from the other mage, Zeus. Prometheus majored in fire magic, and together with Zeus and 9 provinces, 5 lakes, and 4 seas, they formed the 3 elements of magic. Although Prometheus was not a standard canon mage like Mingdu, his PK ability was extremely high. In the previous match, he had defeated the number 1 expert of the 9 provinces team, 5 lakes, 4 seas, in one fell swoop. One should know that 5 lakes, 4 seas was an ice mage, which could restrain fire mages. To be able to defeat his opponent despite being restrained by 5 lakes, 4 seas, it was clear that Prometheus was much stronger than 5 lakes, 4 seas. To place one's pride was the representative of Team Motley Mob. To place one's pride was one of the luckier ones. It was rare for him to be randomly chosen in duels. However, when he was fighting against the Templar team, he was randomly chosen by a newbie. To place one's pride even managed to trick him into committing a foul and being eliminated. However, to place one's pride's performance in the first match of Team Motley Mob's debut against the freelance team was something that everyone was looking forward to. For a Grandmaster of Combat to be able to suppress a warrior's level of control, one could see how strong he was. To place one's pride and evildoers run wild, Wang Yu were also known as the 3 great Grandmasters of Team Motley Mob by the audience. To place one's pride went up the stage. The audience who were ready to watch a game of hide-and-seek suddenly had a glimmer of hope. After all, experts of this level still needed some face. If they could defeat their opponent, no one would run away. Both of them were top-notch experts. The battle would definitely be exciting. Of course, Team Motley Mob was well aware of what was going on. Even if the audience couldn't tell, it didn't mean that the experts couldn't. To place one's pride's sudden outburst in that battle had long been deduced by the professional experts. To place one's pride went up the stage. Everyone from Pantheon couldn't help but feel happy. Although Grandmasters of Combat were nimble, their mobility was still far from that of archers and assassins. Moreover, Grandmasters of Combat were a class that could be used as a tank. Everyone focused on strength and vitality. Agility Grandmasters of Combat were basically useless. Because of this, to place one's pride would have a hard time escaping. With Prometheus's strength, as long as to place one's pride couldn't escape, he would win the match. As a youngster, to place one's pride was still very motivated. If it was an old dog like Chun Xiang, he would definitely compare himself to his opponent after going up the stage. If he didn't have the confidence to win, he would definitely turn and run, not giving his opponent a chance. To place one's pride, however, had to give it a try. As soon as the match started, To place one's pride stomped on the ground and charged towards Prometheus. Huh, this kid isn't running? Seeing that a place one's pride didn't turn and run, Prometheus was slightly surprised. He immediately smashed the staff in his hand onto the ground. Boom! With a loud bang, a three-headed giant flaming serpent rose from behind Prometheus. At the same time, Prometheus pointed his left hand at to place one's pride who was flying towards him. Three intersecting flames sprayed towards to place one's pride in unison. To place one's pride may be young, but in terms of skills, he was one of the top few in Xuanzhen. It was just that his chosen profession was slightly restricted, and his mind was relatively pure, which was why he was always bullied by those animals in Xuanzhen. To place one's pride already had a solid foundation, and was even personally taught by Wang Yu. Evildoers Run Wild even taught him the full set of crotch-kicking techniques, so his strength was definitely not weak. Facing the incoming flames, to place one's pride calmly rolled, dodging the flaming serpent's attack, and rolled to Prometheus's feet. Then, he launched a rising dragon fist towards Prometheus's chin. Yo, not bad. Prometheus smiled calmly and swung his left palm. A ball of flames condensed into a long blade on his arm, and he swung it towards to place one's pride. Blazing Blade, a close combat skill of mages, able to condense flames in one's hand into various weapons to attack a target. To place one's pride reacted quickly. Before the blazing blade could land on his head, he decisively canceled the skill and dodged Prometheus' attack. At the same time, he extended his fist towards Prometheus's neck, and his fingers formed into a claw as he grabbed at Prometheus' neck. Choke! This was Wang Yu's self-created skill, able to mute the target for a certain period of time. Prometheus was a mage, and his skills were all in his mouth. As long as he could mute him, he would be able to kill more than half of him. However, at this moment, Prometheus's right hand suddenly gripped his staff, and he shouted in a low voice, "Retreat!" At the same time, a circle of raging flames spread out from Prometheus. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew past, concealing Pride's ears. Immediately after, it felt as if someone had pushed him. The powerful force sent concealing Pride flying. Chapter 1944. Defying Ring of Fire. A rare fire magic that could repel all enemy units around it. For a class like a mage, the thing they feared the most was a melee class getting close to them. This Defying Ring of Fire was definitely the nemesis of melee classes. If it was a warrior, even if they couldn't get close, they could still use skills like Do-Chi Slash to harass the opponent. But Grandmasters of Combat, especially the monk warriors, were famous for their short hands. Their skills were all about close-range grabs and stunts. A mage like Prometheus, who had the Defying Ring of Fire skill, was the bane of Grandmasters of Combat. To place one's pride was also an expert. To place one's pride was able to determine who was stronger in just one round. He knew that his chances of winning were not high. If he continued to fight like this, he would be easily killed. After all, a mage's damage output was much higher than a Grandmaster of Combat's. To place one's pride did not say anything else. He turned his head and used Bursting Fist, then ran away. A Grandmaster of Combat was an agile class after all. In terms of running away, they were still stronger than a mage. Although he had no confidence in winning against Prometheus, to place one's pride still had the information to shake Prometheus off. F***CK. I knew it wouldn't be that easy. To place one's pride ran away. The audience was furious. They thought that this kid would be able to make a motley crew proud. Who knew that he was such a trash? It was better to run. However, Prometheus did not panic when he saw to place one's pride running away. He waved his staff downwards, and two balls of flames rose from the ground, wrapping around Prometheus' feet. Then, Prometheus chased after him leisurely. The audience was shocked to find that Prometheus seemed to be walking normally, but his movement speed was unbelievably fast. A light step could cover a distance of a few meters. In an instant, he had caught up to place one's pride. Extremely urgent. Fire support magic, able to greatly increase the movement speed of a target for a certain period of time. Mages were naturally skilled, so they naturally had an advantage when it came to chasing. Deity's imprisonment. To place one's pride, Prometheus smashed his staff onto the ground. Boom! With a loud bang, a tall stone monument rose from the ground, blocking the path to place one's pride. At the same time, Prometheus opened his left hand, and 5 rings of fire flew towards to place one's pride. Without waiting for to place one's pride to dodge, 5 fiery rings wrapped around to place one's pride's limbs and neck, bringing to place one's pride towards the stone tablet. Dang, 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 dang. Before to place one's pride could react, the ring of fire had already turned into an iron ring and nailed to place one's pride to the stone tablet. To place one's pride, no matter how hard he struggled, it was useless. After restraining to place one's pride, Prometheus spread out his arms and summoned flames, which transformed into dozens of fire hawks that swallowed to place one's pride. At this time, a line of words flashed above Prometheus' head. Awakening, Goshawk's Bite. A mage's damage output was undeniable. To place one's pride didn't have much HP to begin with. After a wave of arcane damage, to place one's pride was instantly killed. Pantheon easily won the first round. This was the difference between amateurs and top-notch professionals. This mage is quite dangerous. Glancing at Prometheus on the battlefield, Wuji frowned. A damage output class with such powerful support and control skills, this brat might be our main target in the final round. Rebirth's class division was very clear. A support class was a support class. Their damage output definitely wouldn't be too high. A damage output class was a damage output class. Their control and support abilities definitely wouldn't be too strong. The control class of a cannon class like a mage was an ice mage, which had always been weaker in terms of damage output. However, Prometheus was a fire mage. Not only was his damage output impressive, his support and control skills were also so strong. It was truly beyond imagination. Ignoring everything else, just that acceleration skill alone, if it was a single target skill, it would be fine, but if it was an AoE support buff, it would definitely be a decisive factor in team battles. It would be irresponsible of him to let such a guy stay in the arena. To place one's pride was defeated. The Pillar of Light once again descended. This time the ragtag bunch player was Ming Jian Daoxue. With a flash of light, Ming Jian Daoxue appeared on the battlefield. As an old dog, Ming Jian Daoxue's strength wasn't that great, but he knew his own limits, so his fighting style was naturally very conservative. As soon as he entered the battlefield, Ming Jian Daoxue immediately activated stealth and disappeared in front of Prometheus. Even to place one's pride couldn't get close to Pantheon. A person as steady as Ming Jian Daoxue naturally wouldn't try to provoke Prometheus. After entering stealth, Ming Jian Daoxue didn't think twice and activated swift movement, sprinting straight into the depths of the forest. Even though stealth was weakened, it didn't stop Ming Jian Daoxue's determination. With Ming Jian Daoxue's speed, it wasn't hard for him to escape Prometheus's field of vision while in stealth. Although Prometheus was fast, he still needed a target to catch someone. Right now, he didn't even know where Ming Jian Daoxue was, so where should he go? Moreover, the assassin class had always been the nemesis of squishy range classes. In Prometheus's eyes, Ming Jian Daoxue was a player who had made it to the finals, so he should still have some integrity. Under such circumstances, Ming Jian Daoxue would definitely sneak behind him and ambush him. However, from the moment Prometheus believed in Xuanzhen's integrity, he was destined to fail. Seeing Ming Jian Daoxue disappear, Prometheus stood still and cautiously pricked up his ears, trying to hear the approaching footsteps of his opponent. 1 second, 2 seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds. As the seconds ticked by, Prometheus silently counted the amount of time Ming Jian Daoxue had left stealth. However, until the very last second, Ming Jian Daoxue still didn't appear. How could this guy be like this? After realizing that Ming Jian Daoxue had long since escaped, Prometheus was on the verge of tears. He never expected that an assassin who had made it to the finals would have no desire to win at all. How did he make it this far with such a mentality? While Prometheus was waiting for his opponent to attack him, Ming Jiandaoxue had already run far away. Right now, Ming Jiandaoxue didn't even know where he was, so it was impossible for Prometheus to chase after him. Left with no choice, Prometheus applied for a draw. Ming Jiandaoxue naturally knew that he couldn't defeat Prometheus, and a draw was also what Ming Jiandaoxue hoped for. Seeing that Prometheus had applied for a draw, Ming Jiandaoxue accepted without hesitation. The scene changed, and the two returned to their respective teams. For Ming Jiandaoxue, a draw was a victory, but for Prometheus, a draw with such an opponent was hard to accept. How could these guys be like this? Don't they have any competitive spirit? After leaving the stage, Prometheus was still depressed. Psychology master Uranus hurriedly comforted him. It's all right. You'll get used to it. We didn't lose anyway, and the score is a draw. Chapter 1945. In the third round, Pantheon's player was called Poseidon, an ice mage. As a top team, Pantheon's team composition was unique. Unlike Templar, which had many holy classes, Pantheon didn't have a single holy class. Everyone focused on damage output. Even Athena, a shield warrior, leaned towards damage output. Poseidon was Pantheon's main controller. Ice mage, assassin, shield warrior. They were known as the three biggest gangsters in Rebirth. Assassin and shield warrior didn't need to be mentioned. One ambushed, the other had thick skin. They were famous for giving people headaches. As for ice mages, who were above the two, they were even more disgusting. Compared to fire mages, ice mages had lower damage output. However, control mages were still mages. Their damage output wasn't much lower than other classes. Moreover, every ice mage skill had some sort of control effect. Slow, freeze, and seal were the signature skills of ice mages. They were very powerful in both control and attack. Once an ice mage landed on you, you wouldn't be able to fight back. As such, ice mages were the top of the three main PK classes. Most mages would switch to ice mages. After all, damage output was for the rich. It was hard for normal players to find a team if they didn't graduate. However, ice mages were very easy to deal with. As such, ice mages and clerics were known as the two main beginner classes in Rebirth. They were the favorite of players who didn't have a lot of money. The many titles were enough to show the characteristics of ice mages. Motley Crowd's player was Biming Yuyu. To draw two assassins in a row, Motley Crowd's luck wasn't bad. Assassins had outstanding PK and survivability. Even if they couldn't win, they could just run away. With Motley Crowd's style, they could at least tie with assassins. They were different from famous sword Daoxue. Famous sword Daoxue's skills came from his equipment. He had no advantage against players with better equipment. As a veteran of Chuanjin, famous sword Daoxue was quite thick-skinned. He could run away without any qualms. Biming Yuyu was a true expert. She was quite famous in the online gaming world. Although she had fallen, she still had her pride. As a newcomer to Chuanjin, Biming Yuyu still retained a trace of the dignity of an expert and still had a desire for victory in her heart. Even if the opponent was a super expert like Poseidon, it was very difficult for Biming Yuyu to turn and run like Ming Jiandaoxue and surrender without a fight. As the match began, Biming Yuyu's figure flickered and disappeared into thin air. Poseidon felt conflicted as he watched his opponent enter stealth. If he gave chase, he wouldn't know where to go. If he didn't give chase, he was afraid that he would be fooled like Prometheus. It couldn't be helped. In such a large map, assassins are like a bug. Even if they weaken their stealth, it would be useless. However, Poseidon was smart. Unlike Prometheus, he did not just stand there and wait. Instead, he kept moving. At the end of the day, the opponent was an assassin. He could not afford to take any chances. If he were to be stabbed in the ass from behind, wouldn't his wisdom sweep the floor? But Biming Yuyu was definitely a patient person. Time ticked by. Seeing that his opponent had yet to appear, Poseidon relaxed. Poseidon had seen what Ming Jiandaoxue had done in the previous match. With the Motley Crue style, this match would not be an exception. Poseidon's movements slowed down. Biming Yuyu finally made her move. Under the gaze of the audience, Biming Yuyu slowly approached Poseidon. She found an opportunity to stab at Poseidon's lower back. Assassins were the same as ice mages. They were both clingy professions. When two experts faced off, it all depended on who would make the first move. Whoever made the first move would win. She won. To place one's pride, clenched his fist in excitement as Baiming Yuyu made her move. The other members of the Quan Jin sect also revealed looks of surprise. No one expected that Baiming Yuyu would be able to win this round. However, Wang Yu and Wu Ji frowned at the same time. Just as everyone thought that Baiming Yuyu was about to finish off her opponent with a combo, a blue light suddenly shone from Poseidon's body. At the same time, an ice armor appeared on Poseidon's body. Clang! There was a clear sound as Baiming Yuyu's dagger stabbed into the ice armor. Crash! The ice armor shattered, and Baiming Yuyu staggered back a few steps from the impact. Yeah. After one round of exchange, the two people in the arena immediately revealed surprised and bewildered looks. Baiming Yuyu knew that her attack power was not weak. She had even used the assassin's main damage output skill, backstab. Even a tank would feel pain after taking a hit, let alone an ice armor. However, Poseidon's ice armor had completely nullified her attack. How King proficient was this person? Poseidon was also shocked. He was quite confident in the defense of his ice armor. He did not expect it to be broken by a single stab. This assassin's technique aside, his attack power was comparable to the top experts of Pantheon. In the arena, the assassin was the active side while the mage was the passive side, while the assassin was the active side. After the stealth effect ended, the roles of the two would quickly switch. Poseidon was worried about not being able to find his target. When he turned around and saw Baiming Yuyu, he was overjoyed. He raised his staff and threw a string of icicles at Baiming Yuyu. A wretched profession like the assassin would never fight head-on with an opponent. If an attack failed, they would retreat. This was the basic rule of the assassin. Now that stealth was on cooldown, Baiming Yuyu had to wait for a while before she could turn invisible. Seeing that Poseidon was attacking her, Baiming Yuyu dove into the ground without a word. Earth escape. Oomph. Trying to run? Baiming Yuyu had used Earth escape more than once. Poseidon naturally knew what she wanted to do. He snorted coldly and calmly pointed the staff in his hand to the ground. Walala! Blue ice elements spread in all directions, and the ground instantly froze into ice. A line of words flashed in Poseidon's head, profound, 1,000 miles of ice. The 1,000 miles of ice was a large-scale control skill, but it had a special effect on Baiming Yuyu in this situation. Baiming Yuyu's Earth escape could only move through the ground, not through ice. Boom! With a dull thud, Baiming Yuyu's head hit the ice. Baiming Yuyu reacted quickly. After hitting the ground, she rolled on the ground and got up to run. Poseidon raised his left hand and clenched his fist. He shouted, "Rise! Hong long long long!" Under Poseidon's control, the ice on the ground was lifted and swept towards Poseidon from all directions. Chapter 1946. The ground shook, and the ice beneath their feet rose up, surrounding them from all directions. Baiming Yuyu was instantly surrounded by an ice wall. Poseidon took the opportunity to follow up, throwing a few ultimate skills at Baiming Yuyu's face, ending the battle quickly. The third round was over. The score was 0-2. Pantheon and Poseidon still had 4 people left, while Motley Mob only had 2 left. Seeing Baiming Yuyu die so easily, the audience could not help but exclaim, "No matter how strong a fish is, it will eventually be taken care of by the sea god." Ice mages were indeed the best PK class. In the next 2 matches, Ian Lauer and Bao San were both defeated by Poseidon. Poseidon's health points were still above 80%. This showed the absolute advantage ice mages had over melee classes in PK. The second round ended with a score of 0-8. Currently, the Ragtag team had a total of 3 points, while the Pantheon team had 9 points, leaving the Ragtag team far behind. After the second round, everyone had a better understanding of Pantheon strength. After watching the first match, everyone had thought that Pantheon was done for. Who would have thought that this battle team would be so strong? They had caught up in the second match. The strength of the two great wizards from Pantheon, Prometheus and Poseidon, made everyone's eyes light up. It was clear that Pantheon was not just for show, being able to dominate the esports industry for so many years. The last round was not easy, right? In the resting room, Motley Mob was no longer as relaxed as before. After the second round, they were beaten to a pulp by the two Pantheon mages. Everyone tossed and turned, but that was the only thing they said. As the saying goes, control is the key in a 1v1, damage in a team battle. Pantheon had three great mages, thunder, fire, and ice. Poseidon was ranked last among them. After 5 rounds of the second round, the power displayed by Prometheus and Poseidon was enough to make the audience shudder in fear. A support-type fire mage, a control-type ice mage, and the strongest damage-type thunder mage. This configuration seemed like a single class, but when used in a team battle, it was absolutely invincible. Motley Mob was a team battle expert, so they could naturally see the focus of the opponent's formation. With the three mages working together and Uranus commanding them, it would be difficult to isolate any one of them. Good fight. In the face of everyone's uneasiness, Wuji casually said 2 words. What a joke. Everyone questioned, how are we supposed to break through the blockade of 3 mages? We're not Old Cow. He can kill us and then retreat. As long as we stall Old Cow, we'll win, okay? In terms of formation, the Pantheon battle team was much sharper than the Templar battle team. At the very least, the Pantheon battle team could restrain the motley crew. The Templar battle team's formation was a conventional formation, so it was much easier for them to deal with ordinary battle teams. Pantheon, on the other hand, was a control and output formation. Although this formation lacked defensive power, it had extremely high lethality. It was either you die or I die. Only top-notch experts who were extremely confident in their own strength would dare to use such a formation. Before the match, Pantheon obviously didn't know that there was an opponent like the Motley Crew. The target of this formation was obviously the expert teams like 9 Regions and Templar Church. The grassroots players of the Motley Crew would certainly find it difficult to resist. In the arena, only the winner was determined, not the life and death. As long as the rest of the Motley Crew was eliminated, the match would basically be settled. Although such a formation might not be able to kill Wang Yu, it would be very difficult for Wang Yu to eliminate such a well-equipped and sharp formation within the allotted time. One must know that the current Pantheon battle team was leading the Motley Crew by a full 6 points. They didn't need to win the last match, they just needed to maintain a tie. Moreover, the third match was Pantheon's home ground. The choice of the map was in Pantheon's hands. Everything could put the Motley Crew in a passive position. Unexpectedly, Wuji chuckled and said, very soon, they will lose their backbone. Yeah. Hearing Wuji's words, everyone was stunned and asked in bewilderment, backbone? What do you mean? Wuji smiled faintly and said, say, with this group of experts from Pantheon, who can really gather them together? Everyone from the Motley Crew was suddenly speechless, whether it was in reality or in the game. The stronger the expert, the more arrogant they would be. It would be impossible to make such experts lower their heads without some skills. Not to mention this group of great experts from Pantheon who had been apatheicized in various professions. Even the guys from Chuanjin were all unruly and arrogant. To make this group of people obedient, even a smart person like Wuji had to rack his brains. Even so, he was still being scolded by this group of bastards every day. They didn't treat themselves as their boss at all. Unless it was someone like Wang Yu who completely suppressed them in terms of strength. Only then could the people from Chuanjin be convinced. The experts from Pantheon were basically at the peak of their respective professions. It was certainly impossible for their strength to far surpass the other teammates. To become the backbone of this group of people was not something that could be done in a short period of time. Since Uranus could become their captain, it was obvious that he was very capable. Old dog Wuji, could it be that you want to take drastic measures? After thinking for a moment, Chun Xiang narrowed his eyes and asked, Of course. Wuji narrowed his eyes and said, "A group of dragons without a leader is like a plate of loose sand. No matter how strong they are, how strong can they be? If you want to blame someone, blame Uranus for courting death." Achoo! In the lounge of the Pantheon next door, Uranus, who was arranging the last battle strategy, sneezed violently. He then continued, "Athena, Ares, the two of you and 3 mages should be able to hold off Iron Bull, right? If it's just holding him back, no problem." Athena nodded and said confidently. Among the 5 of them, other than Zeus, who was at full output, the others were all hard crowd control players. Their damage output wasn't weak either. Even if they couldn't kill Wang Yu with such a combination, it wouldn't be difficult for them to stall her. That's good. Uranus pointed to the sand table and said, "The rest of you, follow me to encircle the rest of them. Evildoers run wild will not attack them. The only combatant is the female archer, who is a melee fighter. When the time comes, Apollo can just hold her back. Both of you are more of a melee fighter. Try to hold them back as much as possible. We will come to your aid as soon as possible." Understood. Apollo nodded as well. After arranging the battle, Uranus revealed a confident smile. In the end, they're just a motley crew. They are too naive to think that they can win the battle by themselves. Chapter 1947. Both teams were arranging their tactics in the lounge, and the audience inside and outside the arena were also in a state of excitement, because the next match would be the last match of this S-Rank World Pro League. Everyone had been watching the matches for the past few days, waiting for this last match. The result of this match would put an end to the matches over the next few days. For the audience, the most important thing to pay attention to was, of course, the final outcome and the guess of who would be the champion. As a strong team that had won several championships in a row, there was no doubt that Pantheon would be the champion this time. This was almost certain. However, the sudden appearance of this motley crew really made people sweat for Pantheon. After all, no one had ever heard of a super expert like Wang Yu. Especially in the first match, some of the audience even thought that Pantheon was going to be crushed all the way. However, in the second match, Prometheus and Poseidon turned the tide, letting everyone see the strength of the world's #1 team. In the third team battle, there were some calls for the motley crew to win, but now the one-sided trend directly drowned out the voices of the motley crew supporters. So what if he was a super expert? Rebirth was not a single-player game. With so many experts in Pantheon, how could they be afraid of a single person? As for the other members of the motley crew, they were completely out of the audience's consideration. After all, in the eyes of the audience, from the beginning to the end, the motley crew relied on Wang Yu alone, and the others were simply unable to withstand a single blow in front of an expert like Pantheon. The 10-minute break time quickly ended. Wang Yu led the motley crew and Pantheon out of the lounge, entered the game cabin, and appeared on the arena under the attention of the audience. The cheers and cheers of the audience were mixed together, almost tearing the roof off. Pantheon go! Pantheon go! In comparison, the support team of the motley crew was in a more miserable state. Their voices were so few that it was as if they didn't exist. Only the players from 9 provinces and 3 mountains, who were sitting on the VIP seats, shouted at the top of their lungs, "Motley crew, you must win the championship." Although there was some unhappiness between the two teams that was based on the relationship between competitors. Now that the 9 states team had been defeated, the last hope of the national server rested on the motley crew. As the representative team of the country for many years, they could still distinguish between right and wrong in this situation. It was better to let the annoying motley crew win than to let Pantheon win. Of course, it was not up to the cheerleaders to decide which team would win. Just as everyone was cheering for the motley crew, the people from all over the world couldn't help but frown when they saw the motley crew enter the arena. He smashed the boss. 3 mountains, 5 peaks asked in confusion. 5 lakes, 4 seas said doubtfully, "Why isn't Evildoers run wild here for the final match?" Evildoers run wild? Hearing 5 lakes, 4 seas words, 3 mountains, 5 peaks, and the others hurriedly turned their gazes towards the motley crew. As expected, there was no sign of evildoers run wild in the motley crew. That's strange. Seeing that there was no evildoers run wild in the motley crew, everyone revealed doubtful expressions. It must be known that evildoers run wild was the strongest player in the motley crew apart from Wanyu. The motley crew being able to fight their way to the finals was inseparable from evildoers run wild. As one of the three experts in the motley crew who could withstand the market, it was indeed puzzling that evildoers run wild did not enter the arena for the final match. After all, evildoers run wild was one of the few experts. As soon as the motley crew entered the arena, many people stared at Wang Yu and the other two. Five Lakes Four Seas was not the only attentive player. Soon, the audience below the stage also noticed that the motley crew was missing a player. Moreover, it was a heavyweight expert. Evildoers Run Wild was Uranus Insider. As soon as he entered the arena, Uranus subconsciously wanted to make eye contact with Evildoers Run Wild. However, after looking back and forth 3 times, Uranus could not find Evildoers Run Wild. Uranus' heart skipped a beat when he saw that. He was secretly shocked. Could it be that I've been exposed? But very quickly, Uranus recovered and comforted himself. What does it matter? Will that kid betray me? Anyway, as long as he doesn't enter the arena, our goal will be achieved. Everyone from the referees, I have something to respond to. However, just as Uranus was calculating in his heart, Wuji suddenly stopped the match. Please speak. A match was not a war. The referees were still very humane. Seeing that Wuji suddenly stopped the match, the live referees thought that Wuji was having diarrhea. Diarrhea was not something that had never happened before. Thank you. Wuji nodded at the referees and said slowly, I want to report someone for bribing the opponent to fix the match. Hearing Wuji's words, the live audience was stunned. The judges were also stunned and said in disbelief, Is there such a thing? Who is so bold to do such a thing under our noses? Uranus, Wuji said calmly. Uranus? As soon as Wuji said that, everyone inside and outside the arena widened their eyes. Surprise was written all over their faces. In everyone's eyes, Uranus was a top expert. Whether it was his character or his charisma, he was the benchmark of the industry. Even the players of Pantheon, which was a gathering of gods, were obedient to him. How could such a person do such a thing? Uranus? The referees looked at each other, then asked in surprise. Everything needs evidence. You can't slander him. Who did he bribe to fix the match? Evildoers Run Wild. Wuji said, before the match, Uranus gave Evildoers Run Wild a sum of money to deliberately cheat in the match. You're slandering me. Before Wuji could finish, Uranus could no longer hold it in. He pointed at Wuji's nose and shouted, I'm suing you for slander. You're suing me? Hee hee. Wuji smiled and said, Evildoers Run Wild is now on the rostrum. Are you going to go back on the agreement between you two? This is impossible. Hearing Wuji's words, Uranus's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. With a face full of doubt, he said, Does that kid not want to play in the professional circle? What he's doing now is paving a way out for himself. Hee hee, you don't have to worry about that. Wuji smiled and said, Evildoers Run Wild is different from you. He's the second son of our club's boss. He's only here to make up the numbers. Do you think he cares about his so-called professional career? Chapter 1948. Hearing Wuji's words, Uranus was dumbfounded. The boss is playing the game himself? What kind of F***king operation is this? Is this even possible? Uranus had been in the esports circle for a long time, and he had seen the boss in a match before. However, most of the time, these bosses were just playing for fun. They would only go through the motions when they encountered weaker opponents. However, it was the first time Uranus had seen someone like Evildoers Run Wild, who followed his team to the end and was still a member of the main team. Those who could invest in esports clubs were people who did not lack money. People like Evildoers Run Wild were naturally incomparable to people who work part-time. Evildoers Run Wild did not play in competitions. but at most he had the pleasure of playing against top players. If Uranus did not play in competitions, he would lose a high-paying job. Europeans had always liked to enjoy themselves and did not have the habit of saving money. Uranus was the same. Although his salary was high, his expenses were also high. If he really retired, he would not be able to adapt to a simple life. I know what you are thinking. Seeing Uranus's expression, Wuji laughed. You are definitely not convinced, right? Oomph. If evildoers run wild does not have this identity, with just you? Uranus was extremely unconvinced. Hee. Wuji said indifferently. When you have this thought, you will lose. Speaking up to this point, Wuji pointed at Wang Yu and said, Do you know who he is? He is the eldest son of our club's investor. In other words, evildoers run wild is a younger brother in front of him. Excuse me. Wang Yu gave a fist salute to Uranus humbly. This time, Uranus completely broke down. Other bosses played teams to make up the numbers and let a group of experts play with them. These two brothers actually played teams to make up the numbers and play with their teammates. What the hell? This was unbelievable. What surprised Uranus even more was that the person in front of him was actually brothers with evildoers run wild. Uranus's face burned as he thought of his plan to sow discord. While they were talking, evildoers run wild had already handed the contract to the judges. After verification, the contract was confirmed to be true. Esports was a sacred competitive sport. Using such dirty means to obtain victory was absolutely not allowed. What the audience hated the most was rigged matches. No one could help Uranus after his actions were proven to be true. After a discussion by the referees, Uranus was forced to terminate the competition and was sentenced to a 3-year ban. Since evildoers run wild took the initiative to report and did not fix the match, there was no punishment, and he could return to the arena to continue the competition. However, evildoers run wild did not return to the field. Instead, he announced his permanent retirement on the spot. Retire? Why? Hearing evildoers run wild's decision, everyone revealed a puzzled expression. Evildoers run wild was young and capable. He was at the peak of his career. Why did he suddenly retire? I'm a Chinese. Evildoers run wild said emotionally. I participated in the competition to win glory for my country. However, I encountered such a thing. Someone wanted to spend money to make me lose the competition on purpose. This made me very disappointed in the esports industry. Can patriotism be bought with money? Now that I've done such a thing, even if I continue to play, I'm afraid there will be no place for me in the esports industry in the future. I believe that my teammates can do better. After finishing his words, evildoers run wild walked down the rostrum, leaving behind an elegant back view. Watching evildoers run wild's back view, the audience burst into thunderous applause. Patriotism can be bought with money? Exposing the dirty words of the esports industry was taught by Wuji, but this sentence was said by evildoers run wild. Although evildoers run wild was a businessman, as a martial artist, evildoers run wild also had his pride and his bottom line. After all, even a group of wretched villains like Chuanjin would not be selfish in this kind of thing. Naturally, evildoers run wild could not tolerate any sand in his eyes. The departure of Uranus and evildoers run wild really surprised and disappointed everyone. Both teams had lost their commander, and the other had lost their top player. Both teams were injured, but the competition still had to continue. Under the system's arrangement, both teams were sent to the final arena. The map of the third match was called Psycho Cemetery. It was a map that was neither big nor small, but this map was very unique. Rows of graves were neatly arranged in the cemetery. In this fantasy world, ghosts and spirits were real existences. Therefore, the graves were buffed with the dark attribute. As long as players stepped within the range of the graves, they would be forcefully slowed down. The graveyards in this map were close to each other, and there were very few places to step. In a team battle, no one would look under their feet, so this map was basically a full-screen slowed-down map. It seemed that group fights at the graves were not that easy. As soon as both teams entered the arena, they were all buffed on the map. Cursed land. You have been cursed by Dark Soul. Movement speed reduced by 50%. Fuck, 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 fuck. Seeing the curse on his body, Mingdu said unhappily, Pantheon is too evil to choose this kind of map. No rush. Chun Xiang waved his hand and said, since everyone is slowing down, it's not much different from not slowing down at all. Swoosh. As soon as Chun Xiang finished speaking, Prometheus tapped the ground with his staff, and a ball of flames spread in all directions. Immediately after, the feet of the Pantheon members were wrapped in flames. As expected, this extreme urgency was an AoE support skill. F***CK. That's too cunning. Chun Xiang was depressed when he saw this. What the F***CK? The movement speed bonus from extreme haste could completely offset the movement speed reduction effects on the map. Poseidon also had a large-scale movement speed reduction skill, like 1,000 miles of ice. If this continued, wouldn't everyone just be standing there waiting to be slaughtered? It's not a big deal. Wang Yu smiled and said, as long as we don't step on the graves, we'll be fine. Hearing Wang Yu's words, everyone was even more depressed. It was fine that the opponent was cunning, but there was also someone in their team who was trying to take advantage of them. All right, stop talking nonsense. Wuji waved his hand and said, the opponent is about to attack. Don't be careless. Following Wuji's instructions, Yin Lao air rushed to the front of the team and held his shield horizontally, blocking the people behind him. Then, Wuji turned around and said, we are ready to roar. Old cow, it's up to you this time. Leave it to me. Wang Yu nodded and leaped over the graves, directly jumping towards the Pantheon members. Athena, stop him. Everyone present knew of Wang Yu's capabilities and did not doubt that he had the ability to charge through the enemy's formation alone. Seeing that Wang Yu had jumped over, Zeus hurriedly gave an order to Athena, who was at the front. Chapter 1949. In addition, he recommended a prehistoric online game, Online Games Whitebone Sage. The author was a level 5 old dog. The quality and updates were stable. Online Games I Am a Martial Artist was coming to an end. The new book had been released. Please wait a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1950. Who do you think you are to order me around? As the saying goes, it's impossible to have too many capable people. This group of people are really proud, and no one is willing to give in to anyone else. Seeing Wang Yu charging over, if Zeus did not say anything, Athena would have gone up to him alone. As a result, Athena lost her temper when Zeus spoke out of turn. We are all experts. Why should I listen to you? This was the reason why Wuji wanted to take down Uranus. Without a leader, no one would be able to command this group of people. Even if the Pantheon members formed a formation and had someone personally commanding them, they would not be able to take down Wang Yu in a short period of time. Furthermore, the Pantheon had lost their leader and was in a state of disunity. In a fight between experts, a single second of error could determine the outcome. While Athena was distracted, Wang Yu leaped over her. Flying over Athena's head, Wang Yu went straight for the 3 mages at the back. These 3 mages were the core of the Pantheon and were the support, control, and damage dealers of the Pantheon. All the tactical arrangements revolved around these 3 mages. As long as these 3 mages were killed, there would be no suspense in this battle. Come back. Seeing that Wang Yu had flown in front of Prometheus, Athena and Ares attacked at the same time. Whoosh whoosh. The javelin and sickle flew behind Wang Yu. Wang Yu didn't even turn her head. She tapped her feet in the air and kicked both of their weapons. Clap, clap. The javelin and sickle were kicked away by Wang Yu. What the F***CK? Having gotten used to Wang Yu's perverseness, the two of them were slightly stunned when they saw Wang Yu shoot down their weapons without even looking at them. While Wang Yu blocked, Poseidon finished chanting his spell and slammed his staff on the ground. Boom! A wall of ice rose up, blocking in front of Prometheus and Wang Yu. Athena and Ares looked at each other and exerted force in their hands. Whoosh! 2 iron chains crossed each other and wrapped around Wang Yu. Wang Yu couldn't dodge in time and was firmly bound by the iron chain. At this time, Zeus raised his staff, and a violent lightning spell fell from the sky, directly falling on Wang Yu's head. Boom! With a loud bang, Wang Yuan was scattered by the lightning. Not good, it's a clone. The members of the Pantheon were alarmed at the sight of this. They hurriedly retreated and regrouped to protect the mages behind them. Raging flame barrier. Prometheus bellowed, and a huge flaming barrier spread out from his body, protecting everyone in the Pantheon. Bang! Wang Yu, who had stealthily used his doppelgangers to move closer to Prometheus, was also pushed back by this barrier. At the same time, Chuanjin's group slowly moved closer to the Pantheon temple. Chun Xiang summoned a row of evil spirits to block the front of the formation. Immediately afterward, Mingdu stood up, raised his staff, and used the awakening skill Profound Storm on the Pantheon temple. Rumble! Rumble! Dark clouds condensed in the sky as bolts of lightning fell from the sky and bombarded the flame barrier, almost causing it to collapse. Ice barrier. Firmament of thunder. Just as the barrier was about to shatter, a blue and a purple radiance rose up and merged with the flame barrier, forming an even stronger barrier. Although Mingdu's magic power was extremely high, he was facing 3 top-notch great mages. His ice, fire, and lightning barriers weren't strong enough. Moreover, the new protective shield was extremely strange. When the thunderstorm landed on the protective shield, it was all absorbed. Not only did the protective shield not seem to be destroyed, but it also became stronger. Damn, are they shameless? Seeing such a shameless lone ghost inside the barrier, everyone from the motley crew was in a bad mood. They were usually the shameless ones, but who would have thought that they would meet someone even more shameless? This couldn't go on. The Pantheon Temple was leading by a wide margin. If they couldn't win a last round, the motley crew would lose for sure. Just surrender. Our barrier can last until the end of the match. As if sensing the mood of the motley crew, Prometheus arrogantly provoked them from inside the barrier. Damn! Wuji cursed gloomily after hearing Prometheus' words. Prometheus definitely wasn't bragging. A barrier was a continuous consumption spell that could be maintained as long as one had mana. The 3 opponents were top-notch great mages, so it would be quite easy for them to take turns and hold on until the end of the match. On the motley crew's side, after evildoers run wild left, only a powerful attacker like Mingdu was left. It was definitely impossible for him to fight against 3 top-notch great mages alone. What did he say? Wang Yu asked in bewilderment. He told us to surrender. Wuji translated the other side's words. T. Wang Yu sneered after hearing Wuji's explanation. It's just a barrier. Who can stop? Mingdu, just keep attacking. No, Mingdu said. Their barrier has the ability to absorb mana. My attacks are completely ineffective. Then let's have the melee class attack. Baosan said as he walked up and slashed at the barrier. Boom! Just as Baosan's sword landed on the barrier, a ball of flame burst out from the barrier, burning away half of Baosan's HP. CK. At this point, everyone finally realized that this barrier wasn't affected by force or persuasion. Not only did it not absorb mana, it could even reflect physical attacks. What do we do? Seeing how difficult this barrier was to deal with, everyone looked at each other helplessly. There's only one way. At this moment, Wuji frowned. The damage reflection is based on the effect of the target not dying. If the target disappears, there won't be any reflection effect. What do you mean? That's right, Wuji said. As long as we can destroy this barrier in one hit, there won't be any damage reflection. Hearing Wuji's words, everyone was stunned. This barrier was jointly cast by 3 top-notch great wizards, so its defensive power must be extremely shocking. Moreover, it did not absorb mana, so it was easier said than done to destroy it in one hit. I'll do it. Hearing this, Wang Yu stood up. Old cow, don't be anxious. Wuji waved his hand and said, I keep feeling that something is not right. Since they chose this map, why do they still need this barrier to delay time? I feel that there must be a trap. It doesn't matter if there's a trap, Wang Yu said calmly. As long as I don't die, they won't live. As soon as Wang Yu said this, everyone in the motley bunch battle team felt their blood boiling. It had to be said that Wang Yu's fearless aura was constantly affecting the people in Chuanjin. Everyone retreat. Wang Yu signaled for everyone to retreat a few steps. His body swayed slightly, and 5 rays of light burst out. Red, purple, blue, gold, and green. Burning flame steps. Activate. Inner chi surged. Activate. Tempest rage. Activate. Dragon subduing palm. Activate. After activating the 4 major states, Wang Yuan flew up and kicked the martial god forcefully at the barrier in front of him. True profoundness, dragon tail whip. Chapter 1951. Under the buffs of the 4 major statuses, Wang Yuan's attributes were pushed to the extreme. He used martial god's powerful kick, and a shadow of his foot appeared out of thin air. The shadow of the foot was almost solid. It swayed against the wind and became dozens of feet long, kicking the protective shield with the roar of a dragon and a tiger. It was still a mystery how much damage Wang Yu could deal when he was at his limit. This was because everyone or anything that was hit by this kick had disappeared. Boom! With a loud bang, the protective shield was deformed by the kick. Under the powerful attack, the protective shield was instantly shattered like an eggshell. However, the moment Wang Yu landed, Wang Yu suddenly felt a chill under his feet. Whoosh! Before Wang Yu could steady himself, a ball of ice covered Wang Yu from below. Ice seal. The strongest control skill of ice magicians could completely isolate the target. The sealed target would lose all freedom for a certain period of time. At the same time, they would be invincible and external attacks would be ineffective. As expected, seeing that Wang Yu had been frozen into an ice sculpture by Poseidon, Wu Ji smashed his right fist into his left palm. From the start, Wu Ji had felt that this protective shield was a trick. It cannot be forcefully attacked. It seemed that the Pantheon people had raised the protective shield to lure Wang Yu to attack, so that they could find a chance to seal Wang Yu. Just like the previous match against the Templar battle team, Wang Yu is the strongest weapon of the motley crowd battle team, but also their weakness. In the previous match, without Wang Yu, evildoers Run Wild could still hold on for a while. In this match, the ragtag team was at an absolute disadvantage. Without Wang Yu, the ragtag team instantly lost the ability to fight back. 1,000 miles of ice. After sealing Wang Yu, Poseidon tapped the ground with his staff. Walala! The entire arena froze. Under the debuff of Dark Soul, the ragtag team's movement speed was halved. Now that the ground beneath them was frozen, everyone's movement speed plummeted again. Close the formation. At Wu Ji's command, Chun Xiang commanded his evil spirits to surround everyone and release a dark barrier under everyone's feet. At the same time, Yin Lao Air enlarged himself and gathered a shield above everyone's head, forming a defensive formation. Running? They definitely couldn't escape. After all, their movement speed had been reduced to 25%. Everyone was running no faster than a snail. Even if they fought, they definitely wouldn't be able to beat them. The other side had an all-out attack formation, and every one of them was an apatheicized expert. They could be called an all-star team. Other than a bug like Wang Yu, no one else would be able to last one round against them. Right now, the only thing that could be of use was this kind of defensive formation. As long as they could withstand a few waves of attacks and wait for Wang Yu to break free from the seal, they would still have a chance to win. Trying to stall for time? The people of the Pantheon could naturally tell what Wu Ji was thinking. Athena and Ares looked at each other and swung their arms. 2 iron chains were tied to the 2 evil spirits at the very front. Then, the 2 pulled back, and the evil spirits were forcibly dragged out of the formation. Prometheus waved his staff and summoned 2 fire dragons. Poseidon puffed up his cheeks and blew hard, and a gust of wind blew on the fire dragons. The fire dragons swayed with the wind, and the fire dragons turned into 2 giant dragons. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws at the gap in the formation of the motley crew. Bang bang! With 2 loud sounds, Bao San, and to place one's pride who were at the front row died on the spot. At this time, Mingdu also summoned a thunderbolt and hit Ares who was at the front row. In the first round, it was 1-for-2. However, under the influence of the speed reduction buff, the Motley Crew's mobility was much lower than the Pantheon's. Although it was a clash of spells, the Motley Crew did not have the slightest advantage. In terms of quantity and quality of mages, the Pantheon crew had the absolute advantage. Now, it was a moving target versus a fixed target. It was obvious who was superior. After a few rounds, Chuanjin was almost completely dead, and only Wuji was left with the help of the Holy Light Shield. On the other hand, other than Ares who was killed by Mingdu at the beginning, the Pantheon crew still had 9 people alive. Hee, we won. Seeing that there was only one opponent left, the Pantheon crew was overjoyed. Crack! However, just when the Pantheon crew thought that they had won, the ice coffin that sealed Wang Yu suddenly cracked from the middle. Seeing the ice coffin crack, the Pantheon crew was shocked. So fast. The duration of the ice seal was extremely long. With Poseidon's skill level, he could seal it for at least 10 minutes. 10 minutes was enough for the Pantheon crew to kill all their opponents, recover, and gang up on Wang Yu. However, less than a minute had passed, and Wang Yu was about to break out of the ice. This was too damn scary. Ignore that priest. Everyone, get ready to focus fire. Seeing that Wang Yu was about to come out, Zeus yelled to the Pantheon crew. Although everyone was extremely unwilling, they knew what releasing Wang Yu meant. They gave up on Wuji and turned around, aiming their weapons at the ice coffin, and began to gather their skills. As long as Wang Yu came out of the ice coffin, he would definitely die a horrible death. Speaking of which, it was embarrassing. The Pantheon crew was also an apotheosized expert. Now that they had used such a method against one person, they felt embarrassed. However, there was no other way. Victory was the most important. Compared to winning the competition, face was negligible. Bang! Under everyone's gaze, the ice coffin that sealed Wang Yu completely cracked. Wang Yuan's body shone with a golden light as he jumped out of the ice. Attack! However, the moment Wang Yu broke free from the seal, the people of the Pantheon Divine Hall struck out together, throwing all their attacks at Wang Yu. No one knew better than these experts how terrifying Wang Yu was. Therefore, they used their AoE skills right from the start. No matter how high Wang Yu's evasion ability was, it was impossible for him to escape from the layers of AoE skills. Rumble, dazzling magic, and powerful skills immediately drowned Wang Yu on. Just when everyone thought that Wang Yu would be killed in one go, a figure suddenly descended from the sky. Wang Yu jumped in front of Wuji and scathed. He's not dead? How is that possible? Seeing that Wang Yu was able to survive such an attack, everyone gasped in shock. Was he not King cheating? Just that wave of attack, just now? Not to mention a Grandmaster of Combat. Even a shield warrior with a full set of relic equipment would be reduced to ashes. Under everyone's doubts, the big screen replayed the slow-motion scene of that moment. On the big screen, the moment the Pantheon crew joined forces to attack Wang Yu, Wuji raised his staff from afar, and a red light fell, protecting Wang Yu even though it was launched later. Everyone present was stunned by his actions. 4_4613/ Chapter 1952. This. The audience was so shocked that they were speechless. After a few matches, everyone's impression of Wuji was that of a shameless, self-destructing cleric. There was nothing special about his skills. However, the timing and angle of his invincible spell casting just now were not much weaker than these god-tier experts. They did not expect this cleric to have such skills. Die. Seeing that Wuji had come out to discuss them at the crucial moment, the Pantheon members did not let Wuji off. Apollo raised his hand, and a row of daggers stabbed into Wuji's body. Boom! Balls of flames flew, and Wuji was killed on the spot. At this moment, only Wang Yu was left in the motley crew. As expected of the world's strongest team, looking at the 9 Pantheon members in front of him, Wang Yu stood there with a calm expression. Although he did not move, the Pantheon members felt a wave of pressure sweeping over them. "Stop talking nonsense. You're the only one left. Hurry up and surrender," Zeus shouted from the back of the team, raising his staff. "Surrender? Hee." Wang Yu slowly rolled up his sleeves, his clothes fluttering even though there was no wind. "I'm not here to surrender. I'm here to win the championship." As soon as the word championship came out, Wang Yuan's figure flashed and disappeared in front of everyone. By the time the last person finished speaking, Wang Yu had already appeared in the back of Pantheon's team. Before Zeus could react, Wang Yu's big hand was already on Zeus's neck. His 5 fingers clenched and his wrist exerted force. Subduing Dragon Profound, Dragon Claw Kacha. Zeus's neck was broken on the spot. As a mage, Zeus did not have a lot of HP. Wang Yu's attack had hit a vital spot, and with a flash of white light, Zeus passed away. Seeing this, the assassin beside Zeus, Loki stabbed his dagger at Wang Yu's back. Wang Yu did not dodge. He stretched his right hand back and bent his 5 fingers. A golden light transformed into a dragon claw and grabbed Loki's wrist. Subduing Dragon Profound meaning. Dragon capturing skill Loki was involuntarily grabbed from behind by Wang Yu. Then, Wang Yu lifted his knee. Bang! He kneed Loki in the face. Profound art of taming dragon. Falling Dragon Strike Knee Rush was a Grandmaster of Combat's ultimate move, and with the support of Dragon Subduing Palm, its power doubled. Rocky didn't even get a chance to groan before he was knocked to death. Disperse. Seeing Wang Yu instantly kill 2 people with a raise of his hand, the people from Pantheon finally understood what it meant by strength being on a completely different level. If it was in real life, he might have a chance to kill such an opponent with his wits, but in the game, life was infinite. The same move would not work on the same person twice. Even if he could use a surprise attack to win against such an opponent, the difference in strength was absolutely impossible to make up for. At this moment, Wang Yu had activated the Dragon Subduing Palm and was like a hot knife cutting through butter. No one present could withstand a single blow from him. There was only one way to win the match, and that was to scatter and run. After all, Pantheon currently had a huge advantage in terms of points. As long as 2 of them could survive in the end, they would win the match. Following the order, the remaining 7 members of the Pantheon Temple immediately scattered in different directions. Trying to run, Wang Yu narrowed his eyes. In a flash, he appeared behind Prometheus and stomped him to death. Then, in another flash, he appeared behind Poseidon, grabbed him, and threw him at Apollo, who was not far away. Then, in another flash, he appeared above the 2 people's heads. He spread his fingers, and a huge psychic wave in the shape of a dragon descended from the sky. Arcanum of Dragon Subduing. Proud Dragon's regrets the psychic wave landed, and Apollo and Poseidon were blasted into ashes. However, no one knew when Wang Yu had appeared behind Ares, and with a blink chain kick, he landed on the back of Ares' head. Bang! A muffled sound. Ares was killed with 1 kick. Before the white light dissipated, Wang Yu used Blink again and appeared in front of another player. Blink, vanish. Blink, vanish. 6 times in a row, Wang Yu killed 6 people in a row. The last time he used Blink, he appeared in front of Athena. No, impossible. Seeing Wang Yu use Blink 8 times in a row, everyone was dumbfounded. Everyone knew about Blink. As a life-saving skill and a pursuit skill, this skill had a very long cooldown, at least 1 minute. Yet, Wang Yu used it 8 times in a row. How could he say that he was not cheating? Not just the ordinary audience, even the members of the motley mob were shocked. Unlike the ordinary audience, the members of the motley mob knew that Wang Yu had a continuous blink skill called Cloud Dragon's 9 appearances. However, this skill consumed a lot of mana. Every time it was used, the mana consumption would double. Even though Wang Yu had unlimited mana, he could only use it 6 times. Now, he had used it 8 times. What the hell was going on? It's Dragon Subduing Palm. Just as everyone was wondering, Wuji suddenly said, "Old Cow's Dragon Subduing Palm hasn't disappeared yet." No wonder. Hearing Wuji's explanation, everyone finally understood what was going on. Under the Dragon Subduing Palm state, All of Wang Yu's skills had no mana consumption, including Cloud Dragon's 9 appearances. With no energy consumption, it was reasonable for him to flash 9 times, not to mention 8 times. It turned out that Cloud Dragon's 9 appearances could only be used under the Dragon Subduing Palm state. Whether it was Dragon Subduing Palm's 4th stage transformation or Cloud Dragon's 9 appearances, these were all Wang Yu's trump cards. Now that he had been forced to use them, it was clear how strong Pantheon's members were. Of course, no matter how strong they were, that was all. At this time, only Wang Yu and Athena were left in the arena. The result was obvious. Athena raised her shield in an attempt to make a final struggle. Wang Yu stepped forward and teleported in front of her. His hands pressed down on Athena's ears and twisted them left and right. Crack! Athena's neck was snapped by Wang Yu. Pantheon's members had all entered the arena. Only Wang Yu was left in the arena. System notification. Third match, Ragtag Bunch Team wins 10-9. Bonus points awarded, 10. The overall score was 23-18. The Ragtag Bunch Battle Team won. S1 Pro League is over. Champion, Ragtag Bunch Team. Looking at the empty arena, the audience was silent. After who knew how long, the entire stadium erupted with deafening cheers. We won. We really won. Ragtag Bunch Team is awesome. This lousy team actually killed their way to the end and successfully slayed a god. This is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Everyone felt this match from the bottom of their hearts. Including the various pro teams, no one had expected a powerhouse like Pantheon to lose to a motley crew. To be more precise, they had lost to Wang Yu. F***CK. I can't accept this. At this time, the most conflicted was naturally 9 states. Winning the championship for a Chinese team was something to be happy about, but what made them unhappy was that this championship was not won by them. P.S. The new book has been released, and the contract signing notification has been received. Please recommend it, please collect it, and please invest in it. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1953. On the podium, the motley crew stood in the champion's position. Although they didn't say a word and pretended to be calm, the excitement on their faces couldn't be concealed no matter what. Even someone as calm as Wuji was extremely excited at this moment. After all, a year ago, Chuanjin was just a small team that everyone wanted to beat up. Not to mention the World Championship, they didn't even have the thought of playing professionally. But now, they stood on this podium and obtained an honor that others might not be able to achieve in their lifetime. All of this was like a dream. Old cow, Wuji called out in a low voice. Wang Yu turned his head and looked at Wuji blankly. Thank you, Wuji said sincerely. Wang Yu was stunned for a moment and immediately smiled. Actually, I should be the one thanking you. Everyone's life was full of ups and downs. Even the free and pampered Wang Yu was the same. At the lowest point of his life, besides having a wife who never left him, the luckiest thing about Wang Yu was that he met this group of people from Chuanjin. Although these guys had bad characters, they brought Wang Yu to see all kinds of life and hypocrisy and exaggeration between people. After a year of being together, Wang Yu had completely grown up. If there was no Mu Zixien, Wang Yu would still be a young master who didn't know the sufferings of the world. If there was no Chuanjin, Wang Yu would still think that the world was as beautiful and monotonous as he imagined it to be. Now, standing on this stage, Wang Yu saw his own responsibility and understood his own responsibilities. From an ignorant youth, he had completed a gorgeous transformation. At this moment, the host came over and raised a microphone in front of Wang Yu and the others. He asked, as a grassroots team, you guys obtained the highest honor of the professional team as an amateur team. What did you rely on? Hearing the host's words, everyone looked at Wang Yu. Obviously, everyone knew that Wang Yu was the one who won the championship. Wang Yu calmly pointed at the team uniform in front of his chest. The host was at a loss. At the same time, the motley crew shouted in unison, Kung Fu! Kung Fu! Could it be that this guy is so strong because he knows martial arts? I can't believe that Kung Fu really exists. The moment the motley crew said this, the players from all over the world were in an uproar be it in the stadium or in the game. Kung Fu. The once mythical phrase was brought to the world by the famous martial artist, Bruce Lee, and written into the dictionary. After that, it completely fell into decline because of the scammers. In the decades that followed, this word turned from glory to a joke. Today, Wang Yu once again made his name resound through the heavens. Perhaps there were still many swindlers in this world who used the guise of Kung Fu. As long as there were real martial artists, this skill could be passed down tenaciously. Several months had passed since the World Professional League. Wang Yu and others had become the ambassadors of Longting Company. Wang Yu and her husband were walking on the street. They didn't know when, but they saw that the billboards by the side of the street had added signboards for martial arts dojos. The children on the street were also wearing martial arts suits and imitating Wang Yu's signature moves from the game advertisement. No one knew how long this trend would last, nor how many deceivers would appear. But to Wang Yu's relief, Kung Fu was no longer a synonym forgotten in the corner. "You seem to be very happy. Seeing Wang Yu like this," Mu Zixian said with a smile. "I have something even happier to tell you." "What is it?" Wang Yu asked with a smile. "Huh," Mu Zixian whispered in Wang Yu's ear. "Really?" Hearing this, Wang Yu almost jumped up and then said excitedly, "Should we give him a name first?" "I've thought about it," Mu Zixian said softly. "I hope this child is like you, ambitious and shouldering the responsibility he should bear." "Lofty ambitions? How about Wang Zhigao?" Wang Yu gave a name casually. "Get lost." Mu Zixian kicked Wang Yu's butt. "Ha!" Wang Yu said excitedly. "Today is a happy day. I want to challenge a few more clubs. Let's start from this street." The end of the book. P.S. I thought I would be very calm after finishing the book, but when I wrote the words, "the end of the book," Old Cow deeply felt what it meant to be disappointed. It has been 3 years since I started writing this book. Thank you for accompanying me all the way. In these 3 years, Old Cow has experienced the ups and downs of life and tasted the warmth and coldness of the human world. As a middle-aged man with parents and children, Old Cow has to bear all kinds of huge pressure every day. If not for everyone accompanying me until now, I'm afraid I would have nowhere to rest. I was very lucky to meet everyone when Old Cow was at his lowest point, allowing me to shoulder the responsibility a man needs to shoulder. Once again, thank you to all the fans who support Old Cow. Let's meet again. Finally, I want to say one thing. Although Old Cow doesn't write many chapters, everyone knows that Old Cow is a good author. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.